Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor. Please rise. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lister?
Here.
Councilmember Luevanos?
Here.
Councilmember Kavanaugh?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Judge?
Here.
And Mayor Mashburn?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. At this time, we will have city staff provide information on how to provide public statements.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us for the September 14th, 2020 City Council meeting. Due to the actions to address COVID-19, Ventura County cities and the County of Ventura continue to hold their council and board meetings without the public in attendance. Although the public is not here, there are still opportunities for the public to participate. The public statements procedure continues as it has for prior meetings. As noted on the agenda, the public was encouraged to submit emails concerning tonight's agenda. Emails submitted prior to noon today have already been provided to City Council. They will be made part of the record but will not be read by the City Clerk tonight. We still have 2 opportunities for public statements this evening. The first opportunity is to comment on Agenda Item 2, Appointments, Special Presentations, and Informational Reports. If you wish to make a comment on the Appointments, Special Presentations, and Informational Reports portion of the agenda, email should be sent to the City Clerk's office at publicstatements@simivalley.org. Include in the subject line Agenda Item Number 2, and comments should be limited to 250 words or less. Emails already received after 12 o'clock today up to the beginning of this agenda item will be read by the City Clerk's office this evening. At the beginning of this agenda item, email receipt will be closed. Subsequently, the City will read the emails received for a period of 30 minutes. Every effort will be made to read all emails into the record, but some emails may not be read due to time limitations. Emails received after the beginning of this agenda item or unread emails will be made part of the record if received prior to the end of tonight's meeting. The second opportunity to provide a public statement is on Agenda Item 5, Public Statements. The same procedure will be used for public statements. Emails already received after 12 o'clock today up to the beginning of this agenda item will be read by the City Clerk's office. Email should be sent to the City Clerk's office at publicstatements@simivalley.org. Include in the subject line Agenda Item Number 5 and should be limited to 250 words or less. At the beginning of this agenda item, email receipt will be closed and no new emails will be received and read. The City Clerk's office will begin to read the emails received since noon today, spending no more than 3 minutes on each email. The time spent reading emails will be 30 minutes, and for those emails that are not read, they will be entered into the record. So right now, you can still send emails that may be read during tonight's meeting for Agenda Items 2 and 5.
The city thanks you for your patience. During this local emergency, the city is making every attempt to allow the public to participate in the business of the city. With that said, we can move on with tonight's meeting. City Clerk. It looks like I'm up first. For the agenda review, are there any items for agenda review? Everybody okay with tonight's agenda? Okay. Hearing none. 1A.
I move that all resolutions and ordinances presented tonight be read in title only and all further reading be waived. Second.
Motion and second. Call for the vote.
Please vote yes for me.
The exercise today, right?
Okay.
The motion passes unanimously.
Time for a declaration of conflict. If any member of the City Council may have a conflict of interest or any reason why that member must abstain from consideration of any matter on this agenda, he or she should so declare at this time. Anybody have a conflict? Okay, great. Moving on.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, the first item on the agenda is item 1D1, a proclamation declaring the month of September as Suicide Prevention Month. And Kristen Tignack is here to read the proclamation.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. The month of September 2020 is recognized as Suicide Prevention Month. This important proclamation reads, whereas 4.8 million people in the United States have lost a loved one to suicide, and whereas in these challenging times, messages of hope and healing are needed more than ever, and whereas many individuals have a diagnosable, treatable condition, and in many cases, suicide can be prevented, and whereas as a community, we must strive to build safe and supportive environments for those facing mental health issues, because when individuals are ashamed and at risk of suicide, they are discouraged from seeking life-saving help. And whereas the Simi Valley community is working to increase the awareness of suicide prevention resources and reduce the associated stigma surrounding mental health issues through such programs as the Youth Council's Suicide Prevention Art Campaign, designed to share available resources and engage the community in spreading messages of hope and help in those in need. And whereas the Youth Council and the Simi Valley Unified School District annually partner in printing crisis resource numbers on the back of all middle and high school identification cards for easy access to resources. And whereas the goal of Suicide Prevention Month is to embrace the reality of mental illness, educate the community about the risk factors and signs of suicidal behavior, and provide awareness of preventative measures to help those at risk. And whereas positive mental health is an essential component of a healthy community. Now, therefore, the month of September 2020 is hereby proclaimed Suicide Prevention Month in the city of Simi Valley to reduce the incidence of suicide, presented this 14th day of September 2020.
Thank you. Any comments from the council?
I would like to comment just because, thank you for that proclamation. I suspect everyone on this dais and everyone in this room has been affected by a loved one or have some contact with that, with the sadness and just the overwhelming grief and loss when someone chooses that path. And so I think it's particularly important that we have this recognition. And during this COVID time, I think it's become even worse. In fact, I traveled out of state because of a family member who was threatening in that position just recently. So I'm just saying, I think this is critical and important, and thank you that we are making this choice tonight and having this proclamation.
Mayor, if I may make some comments?
Yes.
As an educator of 20 years, I can tell you that, I've dealt with this from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, unfortunately. And I can tell you that words matter. Actions matter. What you say to someone and how you say it, it does impact them. And we don't know what, we can't walk in anyone else's shoes. So please be cognizant of what you say and how you say it and who you say it to. And we can have difference of opinion while still being civil towards each other. And just be cognizant that your words do matter and they do have an impact. Right now is a very stressful time for a lot of people because of the COVID pandemic, because of the economic downturn, because of all the things that we are lacking in right now in support structures. So just be cognizant of that, be aware of that, be kind, and just be aware that your words do have an impact. I've seen it, I've witnessed it, and I've had to intervene many times as an educator. So just be aware of that. And if you know someone that is using that kind of language, please make sure that you talk to their parents, talk to their family, their teachers, their friends, reach out to them and let them know. I know sometimes we treat it as a joke, and that's not always the case. So please make sure that you reach out to your family and friends right now. There's a lot of people that have been quarantined since February. It's been a very difficult time for a lot of people. So just reach out and be kind. That's what community is, taking care of each other. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next on the agenda is item 2, public statements on appointments, special presentations, and informational reports. And Mr. Mayor, there were no public statements received for this item this evening.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is 3A1, appointment of Youth Employment Service Advisory Board members. And Kristen Tignack is also here for this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. Since
Welcome
Thank you. Since 1982, the Youth Employment Service Advisory Board has advised the City Council on matters related to youth employment. The board is comprised of 18 members. On June 30th, 2020, the positions of 6 regular members and 3 alternate members became vacant. On August 26th, a Youth Employment Service Advisory Board interview subcommittee interviewed the eligible applicants and nominated 6 for appointment. Additionally, the Simi Valley Chamber of Commerce and the Simi Valley Unified School District, along with the Simi Valley Youth Council, nominated representatives for their designated positions. If appointed, the applicants will serve terms commencing on September 15th, 2020, concluding on June 30th of 2022, with the exception of the youth representative whose term will conclude on June 30th of 2021, pursuant to Resolution Number 2015-01, in order to maintain staggered terms of appointment, and the Youth Council representative whose term is for 1 year due to Youth Council terms of office. The following individuals are being nominated this evening for appointment. At-large Representative Milani McNabb Robinson, Director of Operations with the Boys and Girls Club of Moore Park and Simi Valley. Local Business Representative Rob West, owner of Sub-Zero Ice Cream. Simi Valley Chamber of Commerce Representative Samantha Shapiro, Director of Operations and Government Affairs. Simi Valley Unified School District Representative Rita Longo, work experience teacher at Royal High School. Youth Representative, age 16 to 22 years old, Zalma Kazada, student at Moore Park College. The Youth Council representative is Peter Wong, Grace Brethren High School student. Alternate members are Deborah Bagley, community member, Rocky Rhodes, Chief Executive Officer with the International Coffee Consulting, and Connor Cubasi, a student at University of California, Berkeley. The Youth Employment Service Advisory Board and the Simi Valley Chamber of Commerce, the Simi Valley Unified School District, and the Youth Council recommend that the City Council approve and the mayor appoint applicants nominated to the Youth Employment Service Advisory Board. This concludes staff's report. I'm available to answer any questions that you may have.
I'm sorry, Kristen, can you just clarify? The motion mentions 8 applicants, but we have 6 applicants and 3 alternates.
It's
so-
9. It's
Okay,
9
I just want to
because
make sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
I made a mistake. Youth Council wound up getting their meeting in before, because we were going to have to come back in October.
Perfect, that makes it easier for everybody. Very good, thank you.
Yeah.
Comments?
I move to approve and the mayor appoint the 8 applicants nominated to the Youth Employment Service Advisory Board.
Can you
Second.
amend that to 9?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, to appoint the 9 applicants nominated to the Youth Employment Service Advisory Board.
So we have a motion and a second. You got that? Okay. Call for the vote.
Please vote yes for me.
The motion passes unanimously. Mr. Mayor, we have no public hearings on this agenda. Please also note all land use public hearings are currently postponed due to the county's stay well at home order and to ensure an appropriate opportunity for public input. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is item 5. This is the time for public statements on all items other than public hearings, appointments, and information reports. All comments submitted by email prior to 12 p.m. noon today have been provided to the City Council and will be made part of the record. However, they will not be read by the city clerk at this meeting. Comments received by email after 12 p.m. noon today up until the beginning of this public statement item of the agenda will now be read for a period of 30 minutes, spending 3 minutes on each email. Every effort will be made to read all emails into the record, but some emails may not be read due to time limitations. Emails received after the beginning of public statements or unread emails will be made part of the record if received prior to the end of the meeting. City Council members may offer a response to the extent possible under Agenda Item 5A. Mr. Mayor, unless you have any other comments, we can begin reading the email comments.
Yeah, quick comments. I just want to thank everybody in the public and staff that's working so hard to make this process still include the public. And I know it's not easy even for the public to read and understand everything, but it certainly looks to me like things are starting to come together. And I just want to express on behalf of the council everybody's patience and working with us and making this still a good public meeting. So thank you. Ready for your letters.
The first one's from Larry Peltier. Support our police. I would like to see what we, as city, can do to support our police and denounce all the rioting that has been going on. Can we declare that we do not support these riots or those that shot the police in LA? Thanks much. Larry Peltier. Richard Moore. Dear Simi Valley Mayor and City Council members, we live in a republic and get to elect our representatives to legislate and enact laws to protect us. Sometimes we need the police to enforce those laws and protect our society. We need to continually support our police forces so that they can do their job effectively and as safely as they can. We entrust them with our safety. Please sign this proclamation to show our support for the police forces at all levels. We also need to be vigilant about which of our elected officials are not representing us to help us respect our country, our Constitution, and our freedoms. And for those elected officials who work against us, we can vote them out of office because we live in a republic, not a democracy. Sincerely, Richard Moore, Vietnam vet, retired math and science teacher. Christina Dana. I respectfully request the City Council to direct the City Attorney to look into Pomona versus SQM to determine whether it's relevant for the city to take any legal action seeking groundwater cleanup. Thank you for your time. Christina Dana, Simi Valley resident. Ursel Stout. Many years ago, we moved to Simi Valley. It had the distinction of being on the list of America's safest cities. We were happy to move to an area where people respected our fine policemen. We still do. But the culture has changed, and so many now are disrespecting the department and the individual policemen. They are on the line every day for us. Let's honor them today and every day. Ursel M. Stout. Joe Pachowski. Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. At the last council meeting, I wrote in about the wonderful rally which was held supporting our Simi Valley Police Department. I also urged that the council consider a proclamation supporting our police and pledging to oppose the defunding of the Simi Valley Police Department or the diversion of public safety money and personnel for social welfare purposes. Mayor Mashburn asked for the proclamation to be agendized for the next council meeting, and his motion was seconded. I was extremely disappointed when I read the agenda for tonight's meeting and that proclamation was left off. I'd like to know if this was at the direction of members of the council or if this was something done by staff. If it was done by city staff, they need to be reminded that they serve at the pleasure of the council, which is the body elected by our citizens. Speaking of city staff performing their duties, I was told that City Manager Gabler doesn't want to enforce our city sign ordinance. When a candidate for local office files their paperwork to run for office, every candidate is given a handbook with the rules to follow. It appears that some candidates on both sides of the aisle refuse to comply with our local sign ordinance. If we aren't going to enforce the local ordinance, why do we have it? I urge the City Council to direct staff to enforce the sign ordinance so that these signs at least conform to our community standards. Bev Zeller. Our police force is tremendous and deserves praise, support, and loyalty. To defund the police in any country would be un-American. In any county would be un-American. And to lower wages for our own SV force would be ridiculous and almost ungodly. Bev Zeller, SVM, Republican Women Federated. I respectfully request, Mark Saghetti. I respectfully request the council to direct the city attorney to look into Pomona versus SQM to determine whether it's relevant for the city to take any legal action seeking groundwater cleanup. Jacob Hubbard. Hello. I respectfully request the council to direct the city attorney to look into Pomona versus SQM to determine whether it's relevant for the city to take any legal action seeking groundwater cleanup. I trust that the council will take the appropriate steps to improve the well-being of the citizens that it represents. Thank you. Jacob Hubbard. Carolyn Shrimp. Dear City Council members, I am writing to ask that you please vote in favor of the proclamation of appreciation for the Simi Valley Police Department. Don't listen to the few angry anti-police protesters just because they may scream the loudest. Defunding or abolishing police departments is out of the question. The good citizens of our community know that we need our police department and appreciate everything they do for us, and I believe the proclamation is an excellent way to show it. Thank you. Carolyn Shrink. Cameron Chase Neal. Hello, I'm requesting that the City Council direct the City Attorney to look into the Pomona versus SQM lawsuit to determine its relevance for our city's groundwater cleanup efforts. Please look into this. Thank you. Peggy Sadler. To the City Council, at a time when law enforcement personnel across the nation are being targeted with violence and defunding by a faction of anti-American, anti-law, and order malcontents, we need to stand up for our fine Simi Valley Police Department. Simi Valley has been on the safest city list for many years, and that is due to the quality of our law enforcement community and the citizens who support them. I cannot imagine any person on our City Council not voting to support our police. To me, that would be a red flag. I urge our city leaders to make a strong statement in support of the men and women of the Simi Valley Police Department. Please sign this proclamation tonight to show that our city appreciates our police department and stands behind them. Sincerely, Peggy Sadler, Simi Valley resident for 57 years. Richard Gallitz. Dear Simi Valley City Council, I have lived in Simi Valley for 22 years. I am concerned about the safety and well-being of our community. Simi is a great city with many wonderful, diverse people. We want to keep it that way. As I watch the damage happening across the nation, arson, looting, riots, and even murder, it makes me appreciate our city and our SVPD even more. Without strong community support, our police, our city might easily fail. I am asking you to pledge to please sign the Simi Valley Police Proclamation. We need to keep our SVPD strong and Simi strong. Thank you. Richard Gallitz, MD. Pam Campau. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. The Police Appreciation Parade last month showed the outpouring of residents supporting our Simi Valley Police Department. The Mayor and Council were asked to take action to support our city's police. They instructed the City Manager to bring back the Simi Valley Police Support Proclamation to the following Council meeting. This meeting. Why is it not on today's agenda? Why has the City Manager not provided the Mayor and City Council with the proclamation as requested so that the proper action can be taken? Thank you. Pam Campau, Simi Valley. Linda Gold. Dear City Council members, as a longtime resident of our beautiful city, I am addressing you to voice my strong support of our SVPD. They are partly why we have such a wonderful community. In light of the current attacks on our police nationwide, even just this past weekend in Los Angeles, where 2 officers were abused, I believe it is our utmost responsibility to show a united front of support. As a city and a country, we cannot survive without law and order. We're watching so much hostility, and over 21 police chiefs are stepping down in other cities. We don't want that to happen here. We need to keep our streets safe and secure for every resident. Please sign the Simi Valley Support the Police Proclamation. Sincerely, Linda Gold. Leah Seghetti. Dear council members, something has recently happened at the 9th Circuit which may open up an opportunity for Simi Valley to seek groundwater cleanup money. The City of Pomona is seeking $40 million from SQM for groundwater cleanup, which has made it to the 9th Circuit, and I believe Simi Valley may have similar circumstances. Pomona versus SQM is the first time a percolate isotope study has been held up in court to determine the origin of percolate contamination. The City of Pomona commissioned a study and found the origin of their percolate to be from South America. SQM, being one of the largest chemical companies in South America, sold the vast majority of fertilizer contaminated with percolate to California farmers for decades. I reached out to the California Water Board to ask them if the groundwater in Simi Valley has ever been evaluated for percolate isotope origin. They told me that Golden State Water Company had commissioned their own private study and determined the isotopes were from South America. I'm wondering if this discovery is relevant to Simi Valley in advancing our desire to have clean drinking water and safe groundwater for potential future needs. I'm respectfully requesting the council direct the city attorney to look into Pomona versus SQM to see if our circumstances are relevant enough to pursue legal action. Thank you. Chelsea Baxter. Hello, I am respectfully request the council to direct the city attorney to look into Pomona versus SQM to determine whether it's relevant for the city to take any legal action seeking groundwater cleanup. Thanks so much, Chelsea Baxter. Thomas Minter, to whom it may concern. I request the pro-police proclamation be placed on tonight's agenda, especially due to the recent attempted murders of LA County Sheriff deputies. In the past several months, we've seen an increase in anti-police rhetoric from our elected officials, which conveys a message of police violence and disobedience. This encouragement of lawlessness has indubitably resulted in several law enforcement attacks and killings. Addressing this proclamation should be of utmost importance by the city and would show the community that the lives and safety of our law enforcement is vital to our way of life. Not including and addressing this proclamation gives a perception that the council does not view the police as important, valued, or necessary. In previous council meetings, a similar proclamation was presented to denounce racism and discrimination in Simi Valley. And I believe the pro-police proclamation bears the same urgency and concern. Thank you, Thomas Minter. Chris Huntington. Hello, I am requesting that our elected members of the City Council issue and sign the proclamation that the people of Simi Valley support our Simi Valley Police Department. My family participated in the parade at the police department to enthusiastically support and show our gratitude to the police officers we are also fortunate to have in our lovely town. It is important to respect police officers and to teach our children to do the same. Our police are part of the community and have challenging and oftentimes dangerous jobs keeping us safe. The current fad to defund police departments or redirect funds away is ridiculous. Police do so much for us that we take for granted. It's especially disturbing to see the current raging protests on the news with people attacking other people and property and the police not being allowed by politicians to defend the ones being harmed or being attacked themselves. This is not how civilized people behave. Peaceful assemblies shouldn't even need the police present. Without rules and laws and consequences being enforced, crime increases dramatically. Do we want that for our children and our community? Simi Valley is a happy community welcoming us to town with Happy Face Hill, where families thrive. That is due in large part to the partnership we all benefit from with our police department. Mayor and council members, please sign the proclamation supporting our Simi Valley Police Department. We appreciate and need them. Thank you. Chris Huntington. Bill Saunders. Dear City Manager, please let this letter serve as my request to reiterate into the record at this meeting, dated 9/14/20, that we pledge as a city ongoing and complete support of our Simi Valley Police Department. With worsening violence occurring around Southern California, we must show support to those members of the force that put their lives on the line daily. Several of my fellow Simi Valley Leadership Class of 2016 classmates also support our very own thin blue line and stand unified together. I look forward to seeing our city pledge safety and peace in these troubling times. Kind regards, Bill Saunders. Kachika. Good evening, Council. As the summer comes to an end and our family starts their 20th year of residence in Simi, I find myself reflecting on the anger and frustration expressed to Council regarding the Mike Judge issue and decision not to censure. Although extremely disheartened personally to watch it play out, the final decision would be to disavow. We hoped now our city would move forward with lessons learned and some growth under our belt. It's time to get down to business and matters at hand. I always believe fiercely, heroes fight injustice for the good of humanity. I naively realized during my summer reflection was the fact that we have very different ideas and definitions of heroes, justice, and community. 2 letters read during council in June and August were from a black family. The first letter denounced Mike Judge's actions. The second was about their son's incident at a gas station. I do not know the family, but I worked with the father/husband at a local Fortune 500 company. Almost 20 years ago, when he was hired as an executive in our department and my direct boss for a time, I privately wondered if Simi Valley should be on his relocation tour, yet blew it off because the world has come so far with diversity. This man was fair, made changes employees liked and didn't like, brought a wealth of knowledge and direction to our changing company. I looked up to him professionally and will remember him always as a mentor. We've reached our limit of words. Rebecca. Good evening, Council. My name is Rebecca. I would like to remind everyone that Black Lives Matter and systemic racism exists. I would like to request for Mayor Pro Tem Mike Judge to resign based on his racist, views that are a disgrace to the Simi Valley Council. I would also respectfully request the Council direct its attention to the ongoing water issues we have in the city. Would it be possible to look at the legal merits of the lawsuit Pomona versus SQM to determine whether it's relevant for the city to take any legal action regarding groundwater cleanup? And lastly, I would like to know if the city of Simi Valley plans to implement a residential rental assistance program. The County of Ventura and the City of Thousand Oaks have been able to offer this type of relief. Thank you for your time, Rebecca. Jan Smith. Mayor, City Council members, as a current commissioner on the CEAC, I feel that we as volunteers provide a valuable service during election time. I understand that staff time is important, but also understand that we save staff valuable time by reviewing campaign statements. In the past election, we uncovered various errors that resulted in the city receiving fines paid by the candidates who were at fault. If you do decide to disband SEAC, I feel it is critical to not do so until after this November 3rd presidential election. Thank you. Jan Smith, Commissioner, SEAC. Patricia Campbell. I moved to Simi Valley in 1963. Then we use the Ventura County Sheriff. After cityhood was formed, our own police department. We have an excellent police department here in Simi, and we should all be proud of them and support them. Get the proclamation done. Then we'll know who supports the police and who does not. Patricia Campbell. Jason Presley. Local communities rely on the dedicated work of police officers who often put themselves in harm's way to protect the lives of others. Simi Valley Police and other local agencies have a long-standing tradition of providing selfless service and countless acts of heroism when called upon. We need our elected leaders to express strong support for the important role of police that is upholding law and order and protecting their fellow citizens in times of need, and to express their gratitude to those law enforcement officers for their dedication and ongoing service. Jason. Ruth Mann. Dear City Council, this public comment is from Ruth Mann, co-founder of RISE, Simi Valley, on behalf of our team. You may be aware of us by now due to our viral video entitled Dear Simi Valley, which addressed the rampant and systemic racism in Simi Valley. We hope you all have seen the video, as feel it is important to each council member's role in serving their community. Mayor Mashburn has failed at his duty as mayor to address the many concerns regarding racism in the city he claims to be so invested in. He has not only failed to contact any member of RISE to discuss our concerns, but he lied about doing so on multiple occasions to different media outlets, such as the BC Star and the Acorn. We feel it was his duty to research and reach out to a prominent organization in this city, but since he has failed at doing so, we have decided to reach out via public comment. We have attached our list of demands here to make them publicly known, as he asked us to do in his Acorn article. If he would like to reach out to us to discuss this further, the appropriate people would be Ruth Mann or Kelly McManamon, as we have made ourselves known to the public as the co-founders of RISE since its conception. It should be noted that the below list of demands is just a start of what we feel the city and its council needs to do to begin to correct the injustices immediately. Word count reached. Linda Tran. On August 7th, 2020, the Simi Valley Council passed a proclamation that did the bare minimum, stating that racism is bad, racial profiling is bad, hatred is bad. I emailed the council then stating that if it wasn't connected to concrete action, the proclamation does nothing. Here we are, over a month later, and what does the council have to show for it? Not much. There have been no revised policies or anything to that effect. I would have hoped someone whose job is to do this 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, would have done something by now. But I'm not surprised. After all, isn't this the same Simi Council who hasn't updated meeting minutes since May 6, 2019? Robbie Hidalgo. Regarding public comment regarding DES order supplement. On April 6, 2020, a supplement proposal for DES number 1 was submitted to Council, providing for critical safeguards adopted by 95% of more than 150 California cities with COVID-19 related relief orders, including reasonable and feasible repayment terms to protect the solvency of our local businesses and residents and preserve our delicate local economy. City manager hesitated to enact provisions of the supplement based on potential action by the state, but indicated that local repayment terms and charges would be absolutely be addressed. In a new development, all federally backed mortgages, roughly 70% of the mortgage market, have now been allowed forbearance up to 12 months with deferred payments back-ended to the loans. This is a breakthrough for owner stabilization. However, the state's last-minute AB 3088 and the CDC's new moratorium continue a substandard legislative patchwork which provides no relief to commercial tenants. Local ordinance remain the only protection available for our local businesses. The legal foundation of N 7120 still prevails and may extend. Since owner protections have now expanded, it's time to supplement DES number 1 with repayment and late fee protections in order to equalize commercial and residential relief with new mortgage relief. Although the upcoming local grant programs may provide 2 months assistance, that fails to prevent immediate default on the remaining balances due. The time to execute supplemental provisions is now. Please update the public on city plans to provide displacement relief, protecting our small business solvency, residential security, and the economic stability of our city. Cassandra Douglas. Dear City Council, I respectfully request the Council to direct the City Attorney to look into Pomona versus SQM to determine whether it's relevant for the city to take any legal action seeking groundwater cleanup. Cassandra Douglas. Diane Robinson. The Simi Valley City Council is scheduled to consider adopting a voluntary social media code of conduct for its members in the wake of controversial posts by Councilman Mike Judge. The City Council is just now requesting guidelines of conduct for City Council members on social media. Most of us work in a field that would swiftly terminate our employment if we acted inappropriately in person or online. A government employee who is elected to represent his or her community would be expected to show leadership by setting an example. Mike Judge does none of this. I have raised 3 children in this community. I have taught them to be honest, sincere, kind, and to stand up to hate. Does this city stand for behavior that is obscene, violent, racist, derogatory, and perpetuates harassment? Does Simi Valley want to be remembered for allowing this behavior within its leadership? Are you, the council members, not embarrassed? I am. The youth are outside of your meeting every Monday voicing their concerns because this behavior by Mike Judge is unacceptable. They are speaking to the future of their community. Are you listening? Is Mr. Judge at the meeting tonight? Is he present? Will he bring informative, productive ideas to tonight's meeting, or will he state no comment? Ask Mr. Judge to kindly resign, make a statement for what's right. Signed, D. Robertson, 30-year Simi Valley resident. This is from Jason Presley, and I'm going to read it as it's written. See the below proposed changes to the proposed code of conduct. As a omitted text here, council, recommended text, and in the capacity of an elected official. Number 2, will not, omitted text, business, recommended text, without council's consent, struck, including items that could come to the city council body for consideration. Number 4, will not, omitted text here, amendment, recommended text is unless they meet the same guidelines as outlined in line item number 7. 5, will consider struck any recommended text and official business, post, omitted text of struck myself in my role, omitted text, entire community. 6, understand that my use of omitted text, Simi Valley, recommended text is in my official capacity. 7, will not post, omitted text, content that is struck or could be perceived to be. G, struck is inflammatory, recommended would be discriminate, struck about and omit text, protected class. I, contains recommended text, known factual inaccuracies. 9, delete. 10, delete. 15, will not, omitted text, do so, recommended text unless community knowledge is beneficial to the community and therefore only notify sender prior. 17, 18, and 19, delete. Linda Trugal. Dear City Council member, thank you for the opportunity to explain my understanding of the benefits of keeping bees in residential areas. I was introduced to beekeeping years ago by a family member who kept bees on his farm. I was amazed at how tolerant the honeybees were of human intrusions into their habitat. I loved the experience and have since taken beekeeping classes and assisted experienced beekeepers in their hive inspections. I have developed a great respect for these amazing creatures as well as the art and science of beekeeping. I have also learned that many common beliefs held about honeybees are misconceptions, leading to people's unfounded fears of these insects and their hives. With the decline of bee populations over the last decades, it is more important than ever to encourage beekeeping. Bees are pollinators and essential for the health of many plants, including fruit trees and vegetable-producing plants. Honeybees are quite docile compared to other stinging insects and do not sting unless threatened. The rules outlined in the proposed amendment in Agenda Item 8A ensures safety to residents of neighboring properties. In summary, I request that the proposed amendment be adopted. Respectfully, Linda Trugal.
Thank you. The 30-minute time limit has been reached. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is item 5A, City Council member comments regarding public statements. Mr. Mayor, you may begin.
Comments from the council?
If I may, Mayor, thank you. Yes, I'd like to address, I know there were many people talked about the protest being violent. You have to understand that what is shown on television is what is going to sell news, what is going to attract advertisers. So they show the most fantastic, outrageous things. But the studies show, there were multiple studies and multiple reliable, newsworthy organizations that show that 93% of the protests around the country were peaceful and continue to be peaceful. So please do not continue to spread the rumor that they were violent and there were all kinds of violence. We had a peaceful protest here in Simi Valley with over 3,000 residents. Families came, parents with their young children came and marched peacefully, as was the case in 93% of the protests around the country. And this country is based on protests. We had the Boston Tea Party. We've had protests throughout the history of this country. So it's nothing new. And that doesn't mean just because you're exercising your First Amendment rights of free speech that it's going to be violent. So I disagree with the characterization that they are violent. In terms of the Pomona versus SQM, I'm going to ask for 9B, although it's 9 and 9B later, with regard to our water quality and Golden State Water, which we had asked previously to address that issue. And as far as the DES repayment for commercial tenants, I will defer to our city manager to see if that is something that is feasible or not. And I believe the code of conduct is on our agenda already, so I will wait for comment on that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Comments?
There were quite a few comments in favor of our police and appreciation for them, and so I understand that we will be having a proclamation coming, but I wanted to thank those of you who expressed their appreciation for Simi Valley Police Department, because we recognize that they do much to ensure our safety, and we are grateful for them, and look forward to further discussing the water issue, I'm glad that that's been brought up. With regards to Jan Smith's comments about the CAC, I just wanted to express our gratitude to her and those who serve on the CAC committee, that we recognize it's a thankless job, but we are very appreciative of their efforts in keeping our elections safe, and we will be looking at it very carefully. The other comment that I wanted, actually at the very end, Linda, thank you for your comment about bees. Again, we will be discussing that, as we will also be discussing the other issues about social media, etc. But thank you, Linda, for writing in and expressing your opinions as a beekeeper. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Dee Dee?
Thank you. I just wanted to express my appreciation for all the people that wrote in supporting our police department. There will not be any defunding during the current budget. That budget was already approved, and the majority of the council voted to approve that, so we don't have to worry about that at this point in time. I'm very proud to be associated with the Police Foundation, who supports our police department, and I think the community does a very good job of doing that also. That's what makes living in Simi Valley such a special thing, is that we work as a community all together, our police department and our community, and that's not always available in other areas. And on the watershed, or excuse me, the watershed cleanup is kind of what I wrote in my note. Somebody had reached out to me, so I knew that was going to be brought up tonight, and I do think Councilmember Loveno said she's going to bring it up in 9B, so I think that is something that we will look at. So, thank you.
Anybody else? Myself? Okay, first of all, I'd like to say to Richard Moore, thank you for your service. And along those lines, the proclamation that we're all speaking of, we discovered there needed to be some wordsmithing, and we're getting together with the authors of that proclamation to make sure that we don't change it in such a way that they would not approve. And it's on the agenda for the next meeting. So there's no desire to hold it up. There's a great desire to do it absolutely correctly. As far as the groundwater and City of Pomona, I too join with everybody else. We can ask our city attorney to research that and see if there's a direction we could or should move in to verify the quality of our water. I think that's it. Oh, one thing, it says I wouldn't, someone said, I think it was Linda Tram said I wouldn't meet with anybody from their organization. I spoke to Linda Tram for well over an hour one day on the telephone discussing that, and she did provide me with the video, and I watched that video, so I don't quite understand her position that I hadn't talked to anybody. So maybe just a mistake. So with that, we'll move on.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is item 6, the consent calendar, and there are no resolutions for consideration.
Okay, consent calendar. Any questions regarding the consent calendar?
Mayor, I'd like to pull item number 2.
Number 2. Anybody
And
else?
I'd like to pull item number 1, just for a brief comment.
Okay. Go ahead with the questions on, we'll start 1 and we'll do them in order.
Actually, I don't have any questions about the report. I found it very effective and very well written. I really wanted it pulled simply. This has to do with receipt of the Simi Valley Public Library annual report, and I really just wanted to pull it so that we could commend Kelly Bealey, who I believe is here in the audience, or here in the chambers, and wanted to thank her for her efforts. I thought it was interesting, the decision in July 2019, as the website was being redesigned and they moved to a different e-cloud or cloud library with bibliothèque. I thought was maybe prescient that you that it was very inspired to do that allowed for greater access for our many people who have desired materials during this COVID shutdown. And so I just wanted to say thank you for the efforts, and also wanted to say thank you to the Friends of the Library who've donated $41,000. That group is certainly doing much to serve our community. And so really that's why I wanted to pull it, was just to be able to say thank you.
If I could speak to item number 1 as well. I want to make sure Councilwoman Visitors then.
That's good. Thank you.
I had requested from City Manager when COVID really hit our community in February of this year about investing in our library or other city buildings, but specifically our library, to boost the Wi-Fi signal so that those who do not have access to the internet would be able to have access to the internet. There's already been stories on the news of children outside of Taco Bell's and Starbucks using the Wi-Fi there just so they can get their schoolwork done. And this COVID crisis has hit our low-income families the hardest, and our low-income students the hardest, which are at the worst socioeconomic advantage. So I want to know if in the future we can consider adding or applying for, there are still funds for COVID grant to boost a Wi-Fi signal from our Simi Valley Public Library so that those low-income residents who don't have access to internet can have access to internet if they would, say, park in the parking lot here adjacent to the library. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, sure. We did boost the signal, and it is fairly strong in the quad area, which is, I guess, right out there. But we can certainly do a better job and boost it out towards the library. We have COVID money that we can put to that, so we can certainly do that.
Thank you.
We'll add to that and advertise, make sure people are aware of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unfortunately, sometimes we do things and
Yeah.
people don't realize it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Moore Park Unified School District did that at each of their schools, so families could go to the schools and get the boosted Wi-Fi signal there, but we haven't had that here in Simi Valley Unified, so.
We'll take care of that.
Thank you.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
You got number 2.
Good, number two.
Oh, that's 2, I'm sorry.
I appreciate that Mayor Mashburn and Mayor Pro Tem Judge have been the delegates and alternate for the past 2 years for the League of California Cities. I would request that Councilwoman Litster, Councilmember Kavanaugh, and myself have the opportunity to serve in that position as well. I think the more all of us get experience in the different entities that we represent as a city, I think the better suited and the more qualified we are to do the job that we do, which is to represent our constituents. I cannot speak for Councilwoman Litster or Councilwoman Kavanaugh, but I know that I would like to participate in that process through the California League of Cities. That is my request.
Comments?
Oh, I thought it was just always the mayor and the mayor pro tem, but I know Mayor Pro Tem Judge has been very active with League of California Cities, so I have no problem with it. I don't have an interest to do that at this point in time.
Just a clarification, and I assumed it was this tradition that the mayor and mayor pro tem are the ones that serve in that capacity, but it is my understanding that as council members, we can request to attend even if we're not there in a voting capacity. So, I guess my encouragement would be that Councilmember Luevanos, that if you have a desire to attend, I would suggest to be part of that. And I think in fact I may have done so last time around. And then it became virtual. But so I think but maybe I'm mistaken about that. But I believe we can still attend even if we're not actually the one voting.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Can I give some background on that, Councilwoman Litster? First of all, I looked at the League of California Cities, and it does not say that it's required to be the mayor and the mayor pro tem. It just says city representative. Secondly,
It could in fact be a non-council member even.
Yeah, no, I guess I just meant I think it's traditional
Yeah. And
here in
then
Simi
I have
Valley.
attended the California League of Cities. I'm big on professional development, making sure I do the best job that I can as an elected official. But they do have some closed session and then voting, on behalf of the city. And, I was there for even the virtual one, but then I got kicked out because I wasn't a representative, so I missed out on that part of the conversation. And it would have been nice to hear policies that other cities in the region are doing and how they're dealing with those policies. And so that was my reasoning for asking if, because it's not in the rules that it has to be the mayor and the mayor pro tem. So I thought it would be only fair to ask to see if other council members could participate on behalf of the city.
Okay, ready for a motion?
So I move to designate, so if Councilwoman Litster and Councilwoman Kavanaugh are not interested in representing as a voting delegate, I move to appoint myself as the voting delegate or an alternative voting delegate so that I can participate in that part of the California League of Cities Conference.
Motion fails due to lack of a second.
Okay, back to the consent calendar.
Move consent items 1 through 3.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Call for the vote.
Please vote yes for me.
The motion passes with Councilmember Luevanos voting no. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is item 7A, second reading of ordinance number 1312, amending portions of Title 8 by adding a new Chapter 25 and Title 9 by adding new Section 9-44.185 and 9-76.040.d of the Simi Valley Municipal Code related to electrical vehicle charging stations and determination that the amendments are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. The reading of the ordinance is as follows. Ordinance number 1312, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Simi Valley for Z-S-753, amending portions of Title 8 by adding new Chapter 25 and Title 9 by adding new Sections 9-44.185 and 9-76.040.d of the Simi Valley Municipal Code related to electric vehicle charging stations and a determination that the amendments are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. And staff is available for questions.
This is the second reading, so I move to adopt ordinance number 1312.
Second?
Motion and second. Call for the vote.
Please vote yes for me.
The motion passes unanimously. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next on the agenda is item 7B, introduction of an ordinance repealing Simi Valley Municipal Code Section 2-3.201-2-3.208 and subsection 2-5.12H regarding the Citizens Election Advisory Commission effective on a date to be determined. The reading of the ordinance is as follows. Ordinance number 1313, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Simi Valley repealing sections 2-3.201 through 2-3.208 and subsection 2-5.12H of the Simi Valley Municipal Code regarding the Citizens Election Advisory Commission and a determination that the action is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. And Samantha Argabright is here for this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. During the August 24 City Council meeting, the Council directed staff to return with an ordinance to discontinue the Citizens Election Advisory Commission, or CEAC. The ordinance attached does not have an effective date included. The City Council may wish to consider the following options when selecting a date to discontinue the CEAC. Should the City Council choose to select a date as soon as possible, the soonest date that ordinance could be effective is November 6th. Because the next City Council meeting is next Monday, September 21st, there is not enough time to complete the proper publishing requirements for a second read on that meeting. Therefore, the soonest the item can come back is during the October 5th City Council meeting. 31 days later is November 6th. The City Council also may wish to consider a date following the completion of the CEAC's duties for the 2020 election. If so, staff recommends Sunday, February 7th. February 1st is the final campaign finance filing deadline for candidates, and per the Simi Valley Municipal Code, the CEAC must meet within 5 days to review the filings or by February 6th. With either of these options, if the Council wishes to cease CEAC meetings immediately, it may also direct staff to suspend further meetings until the chosen effective date of the ordinance. This concludes staff's report, and I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Questions of staff?
I do have a question, if that's all right. So some of what Jan Smith said of the CEAC committee is ringing in my ear a little bit, and so I just want to make it clear. In her public statement, she said that the CEAC committee uncovered various errors and fines were assessed because of their actions. And my question is, would those errors have been uncovered had the CEAC not been in existence, and would fines, et cetera, have been levied? Would that have still been caught otherwise?
Typically, yes. The city clerk does also review the statements as well. And so prior to the city clerk providing those statements to the SEAC, the city clerk does review them. And then also at the time that these statements are turned in to the city clerk does a review at the time. So if there's anything immediately that can be corrected before acceptance, those are also brought up to the candidate or their treasurer if they bring it in.
So, they're reviewing the statements, but I guess I'm assuming some of it has to do with the political or the financial filings or lack of filing, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guessing that that's where fines were, or mistakes were found and fines were levied, possibly in previous years. Am I in error with that?
Typically,
May I?
of course.
I think she may be mistaken on that.
Okay.
Because my experience has been, I'm looking for help here, is that SEAC finds errors in your filings before it's actually filed with the city clerk or the state, and so we correct them, and even then, sometimes it may not have anything to do with a typo or math figuring. It's something else that there's a violation, and that comes later and even by the state. I can give you, for instance, I'll step up to the plate here. I was fined either $100 or $50, I forgot which, because I missed a filing date. Mm-hmm. And but I don't think SEAC has taken the position that they're looking for things that you did wrong so you can be fined. It's actually to prevent you from being fined.
The goal typically is to ensure that the information that the candidate provides is the most accurate. Oftentimes what we tend to find with the fines in the city's campaign finance ordinance, there's fines levied if a statement is late, per so many days. And so in the past, in my experience, we have levied fines against folks who, just completely blew off filing deadlines and things like that. But obviously, we give as many warnings as absolutely possible, and we really try to work with people. And we notify them in advance multiple times of the filing deadline to ensure compliance prior to that state. And the clerk does all of those notifications ahead of the campaign filing deadline. But certainly, the goal is not necessarily to fine people. We really would prefer voluntary compliance.
If I may ask a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Don't want to
Sure,
interrupt
it's
either one
fine.
of my colleagues. Have there been times when SEAC made a mistake and that the clerk caught SEAC's mistake? Where SEAC asked for something to be corrected, but it actually didn't need to be corrected?
That has also happened as well. And at the time that happens, staff will identify, if there is something that they're thinking might be an error, but it is indeed acceptable. Staff will notify them of that as well.
Okay, so that would mean that that's extra time that the clerk has to present to SEAC, and then SEAC says this is a mistake, and then the person is notified there's a mistake, and then that person has to contact the clerk, and the clerk says, no, it's not a mistake. So that's all this additional time, right? That if the clerk might have said, oh, no, that's fine the way that it is. I'm trying to reduce the undue and unnecessary burden on staff. We're going into the middle of campaign season, and it's just 4 more sets of eyes. And it's not that I don't appreciate everything that SEAC does, and there was a time and a place for this, but it just seems like there doesn't seem to be a time and a place for it now, especially in the middle of a pandemic, when it's very difficult to gather people and to go through all of these things, and that everything is already online, everything is available online. So we have an entire public that is, going to look at it and say, hey, there's mistakes here or there, and catch people. So it just seems like it doesn't add accountability or transparency. So I say we just terminate it now. That's my feeling. That's my comment, Mayor.
If I can go back, Councilmember Luevanos, typically if the SEAC identifies something during one of their public meetings that is indeed acceptable, the clerk will let them know at that time. So we do try to avoid notifying candidates of information that is incorrect. So just so you're aware, it's not typically something where we would let them know it's wrong and then have to come back and say, oh, actually, it's okay.
But the communication still has to go through the clerk, right? The clerk still has to communicate. So
Yes.
it's just an extra, it's like, you have to bounce it through this committee, and then it goes back to the clerk, and then the clerk has to communicate with the person anyway. So it just seems like an extra layer, it just seems extra. And it's unnecessary because it doesn't, as as was noted in the previous staff report when we discussed this issue, it does not add any more accountability or transparency than already exists.
Correct.
I agree with Councilmember Luevanos. I think when we look at everything's online, transparency is paramount, and the SEAC does not add to that transparency any longer because everything's online and we're being so closely scrutinized by the public. And I think I've watched the city clerk. They'll take the documents and go right through them again. And so it's like a double duty. The only thing, the one concern I have is based on we're currently in a campaign season, I'm leaning towards we should go ahead and continue through this campaign, through this election, and leave them in place so it doesn't appear that we, or any candidate, not just those up here, but any candidate, is somehow trying to avoid something. And so that in itself would be a form of transparency that I'd like to see remain, is that it goes through this election and then terminate the service.
If it added a layer of transparency and accountability, I would agree with you, Mayor. But as noted by the staff, it does, by the staff report that was given the last time we discussed this, and this time, it doesn't add a layer of accountability or transparency. We have an entire public that is going to be looking at everyone's campaign statements online, and if they want to find a flaw, they're going to find it, they're going to report it, they're going to tell the clerk. And why place an additional burden? We have 3 more campaign statement deadlines that are September 24th, October 22nd, and February 1st. So that's 3 more meetings that have to be arranged with the staff and SEAC, and then, going back and forth through all the, and we have a lot of candidates. We have a lot of candidates for city council and for mayor. And so I understand your trepidation in terms of not wanting to seem like there's not accountability or transparency, but in this instance, it doesn't add any accountability or transparency. Everything is going to be available to the public online for everyone to peruse and for everyone to be held accountable. And I think the public is our harshest critic and will hold us accountable if need be. So, I'm happy to make the motion. I'm not up to it.
I'd like to speak first, and I think you also want to.
Yes.
Okay. Dee Dee.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor, I agree with you. That was my first thought process, is we're in the middle of a campaign already. It doesn't really behoove us to stop it at this point. And one of the things that does concern me is 3 of us are candidates during this election, and I don't want any type of question. I want to be completely transparent so that we are not changing something in the middle that we are a part of. So I believe, plus the other thing is, our SEAC committee is so dedicated, and I would really like to see them be able to follow through on their job this time. I know it's a little bit more work for the city clerk. I do apologize for that. But I think some of us are getting better at campaign statements, so you don't have any errors to find, which is a good thing. And one of the other things, just a comment, is they are public records. They are available out there, but the average public doesn't understand the campaign statement and when something's a problem or not. So that is something that the FPPC is now doing on a random basis. But I do think that being as how we've already started this election with the SEAC, that we continue it through this election, through the February 7th date that staff recommended. Those are my comments.
And if I could follow up, I concur about letting it complete this cycle and going with alternate 1, which basically is to end it at February 7th. My question was to make sure that February 7th gives time for any review or appeals or problems. Does it will it be absolutely complete by that date? Or would it be more appropriate to say February 7th, or when review or overseeing is complete for this election cycle?
So the deadline for the statements is February 1st, and the SEAC must meet within 5 days of that election deadline, or that submittal deadline. So they have to meet by February 6th. So they would provide any direction to the city clerk for any errors, any changes, any edits by that February 6th date. And then the city clerk would then send any letters.
So it's the city clerk's action at that point, and they would have no more responsibility in any way?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It seems to me, I understand that we started the campaign season already, But these next three filings, September 24th, October 22nd, especially and then February 1st, are in the midst of when it's like the busiest for the campaign. So the documents are going to be longer. There's going to be more to review. It's going to take more time. It's going to take more staff time, and the SEAC meetings are going to be longer. It just seems to me that we're placing an undue burden on our staff, and we have precious staff time and resources available to dedicate to that when, again, it does not add accountability and transparency. And I know that it's difficult to let go of something that is tradition that we've had for so long, and had we not other, things in place to have accountability and transparency, and I understand that difficulty, but there was a time and a place for this committee, and it's no longer necessary. And I think this is going to place even more stress and more of a burden on our staff, unfortunately.
I tend to disagree with
Mr. Mayor,
that.
if I could.
Oh, go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
If I could, yeah, I would just go and make a statement. Since I've heard the council talking about this, I would just like to move with staff's recommendation of alternate 1.
I'll second.
Which one? Did I hear a second?
Yes, I did.
Okay, call for the vote.
Please vote yes for me.
I would just like to clarify voting no, because I think it should be terminated immediately and not wait.
The motion passes with Councilmember Luébanos voting no, Mayor Mashburn voting no.
Okay, next item.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is item 8A, request for direction on the Simi Valley Municipal Code requirements regarding beekeeping activities in single-family residence zones, and Strategic Perils is here for this presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. The item before you tonight is a request for City Council direction as to the initiation of amendments to the Simi Valley Municipal Code to modify beekeeping, also known as apiculture. In April of last year, the City Council requested information pertaining to existing zoning requirements related to beekeeping in residential zones in response to community concerns about the limitations placed on backyard beekeeping in the city. A memorandum dated April 23rd, 2019, and labeled as Attachment A in your report, was provided to council members with an explanation of existing Simi Valley Municipal Code regulations pertaining to beekeeping in the city. Following that memo, the City Council requested that staff provide a report back as to whether the city should consider modifying current municipal code regulations pertaining to the keeping of bees within single-family residential zoning districts. So tonight, we will discuss our current rules, how we compare to other jurisdictions, and about the Bee City USA program. Tonight we have Senior Planner Jennifer Santos with us, as well as Contract Planner Chris Ronenberg with Rincon Consultants. Chris with Rincon has been assisting us on our code updates and other special projects, so I'm happy to turn it over to Chris.
Thank you, Stratus. The municipal code currently allows beekeeping with a zone clearance. Is it not on? The current municipal code currently allows beekeeping with a zone clearance in the animal overlay and the residential very low zoning districts. Beekeeping is also allowed in the residential estate and open space zoning districts on properties that are 3 acres or larger. An administrative conditional use permit is required for farm animal keeping, which also includes beekeeping on properties located outside the animal overlay zoning districts that are 20,000 square feet or larger. Beehives must be maintained in a manner that does not allow them to become a nuisance. Hives are to be located to the rear of the residence, at least 5 feet from the rear and side yard property lines, and at least 50 feet from any legally existing off-site habitable structure other than the residence of the property owner. Staff surveyed other local jurisdictions and found that none allow backyard beekeeping in residential zoning districts. Ventura County, Moore Park, and Thousand Oaks permit beekeeping in rural, agricultural, and open space zoning districts with some general requirements identified in the slide. I should also point out that the county staff indicated they were working towards a possible code amendment to allow for backyard beekeeping in single-family residential areas. All beehives in the county are required to be registered with the Ventura County Agricultural Commissioner's Office. The Commissioner's Office works on a complaint basis through the County Code Enforcement Division to address and resolve any beekeeping code violations. The Commission's Office indicated that they get a few complaints per year regarding beekeeping, typically in the summer months when bees may be attracted to water off-site. At this point, the program seems geared toward agricultural operations and discourages residential backyard beekeeping due to potential conflicts with neighbors. Staff compiled additional information pertaining to beekeeping from around the state, particularly as it applies to keeping of bees in single-family residential zoning districts. Statewide, beekeepers are required to comply with California state food and agricultural codes pertaining to bee management and honey production. In addition, the University of California Cooperative Extension published a summary of beekeeping ordinances for Orange County cities in early 2019. This information has been included as Exhibit 1 in your report. At this time, it does not appear that many Orange County cities allow beekeeping in single-family residential zones. The cities of Los Angeles and Santa Monica both have amended their codes to allow backyard beekeeping in single-family residential zoning districts. Exhibit 2 included in your report shows Los Angeles' ordinance requirements that were approved in 2015. According to the planner involved, the city only experiences a few complaints per year stemming from beekeeping activities. The city of Santa Monica amended its code in 2011 to allow backyard beekeeping in residential zones. Beehives are required to be registered annually with the city's Animal Control Division of the Police Department. Animal control staff estimate they get between 5 to 8 properties a year registered for beekeeping activities. The City Council may also consider becoming Bee City USA certified. This program is a national organization that endeavors to make a difference in reversing the threat currently facing native pollinators around the world. Please refer to Exhibit 3 of your report for detailed information. Like the Tree City USA program that the city participates in, the Bee City USA certification requires a number of city commitments that include establishing a standing Bee City USA committee to advocate for pollinators, create and enhance pollinator habitat on public and private land and incorporate pollinator-conscious practices into city policies, acknowledge Bee City USA affiliation with signs and online presence, pay an annual application fee of $500, and submit renewal applications with a report on the previous year's activities. If the City Council finds it appropriate to evaluate the benefits of becoming a certified Bee City USA, staff will research the amount of staff time and budget necessary to develop the program. 8 cities currently in California are Bee City USA certified, including Thousand Oaks and Santa Barbara. In conclusion, staff recommends that the City Council consider the request and provide staff with direction to initiate amendments to the Simi Valley Municipal Code to modify beekeeping or apiculture activities in single-family residential zones.
Okay.
I'd be happy to address any questions you may have at this time. Thank you.
Questions, staff? Councilmember Lebanon.
Okay, I have lots of questions. Let me go one by one. What notice needs to be provided to neighbors?
Excuse me?
What notice needs to be provided to neighbors? Because I didn't see that anywhere in the staff report. So if my neighbor decides to, start beekeeping, do they have any obligation to give me any notice as a neighbor?
Well, we're not there to actually change the code at this point in time. It's just to initiate it. So we would go down that road a little bit further. But currently, I don't believe there's any notification for neighbors, associated with.
I didn't see that in the Santa Monica, or I didn't see it in either one.
No.
What if the neighbor, finds out that their neighbor is applying for it? And I'm asking this because, I'm allergic to bees, and I know that there are a number of scouts and families that are allergic to bees because I've been a Girl Scout day camp volunteer for the past decade, and I work with the Boy Scouts, and they have to list all of their allergies. And so I know that there's quite a few families with, family members that are allergic to bees, and I mean like they carry an EpiPen, allergic to bees. So my concern, one of my concerns is if there's no notice provided to neighbors and someone starts a beekeeping, thing, and the lot size was concerning to me as well because, 2,500 feet is a very small lot size, and it just seems like it needed to be bigger. I'm also concerned about, if they sell the house or if they're renting versus owning, the property. Those are questions I had. I also wanted to know if the...
Councilmember Lewis, can I just, these are all good questions, but as I understand this presentation, we don't have any ordinance right now in place that governs bees, and this is just to discuss whether or not we want to even consider going that direction. So your questions are all good, but I think they might be appropriate if we decided we even wanted to go that direction.
Well, I'm just basing it on the proposed ordinance that was in the staff report. So if we're providing guidance and direction, this is the kind of things that I want considered.
Yeah, and I didn't see a proposed ordinance. I just saw the examples of Santa Monica and in Los Angeles. And anyway, but I don't want to stop your questions. I just want to share that that's my understanding.
And then my other question is, even before we get into discussion, is this something that we should be sending to the Planning Commission before it comes to us?
It will go to the Planning Commission. This is just to initiate it, a formal initiation of a municipal code amendment. And then so if you were to initiate this code amendment, then it would go to the neighborhood councils and to the Planning Commission and then back to the city council.
Okay. I guess those are my, I would, again, I was looking at the proposed ordinance and looking at the space and, the number of hives on a property. I grew up in Sylmar, which is, we had an equestrian zoned area, so we had 3/4 acre lots, so I could see someplace like that. And I know we do have larger lots here in Simi Valley where that seems more feasible, but 2,500, it just seems very small. It's not to say I don't want to promote this, but it just seems like a very small lot size, and I would like to see if that's part of the discussion that we would have. And in terms of being Bee City USA certified, I don't know if that's something that we have in our budget or if we can pay for that, or I know there's been lots of residents that, for years have been talking about all the pesticides that have impacted our bee population, and it does affect, what happens here with a lot of people who have backyard gardens and things like that, and, have fruit trees. So I know that is definitely something that I think a lot of residents would get behind, becoming BC USA certified, but I think my concern is for residents who are allergic, who are highly allergic to bees, and making sure that they get notice. And if 3 of my neighbors or 2 of my neighbors started, doing beekeeping, I would be very concerned for my safety. And if I was a parent of someone who was highly allergic to bees, that's something that I don't see in any of these proposals of ordinances. But I would say that that's something, if we do move forward with this, that there needs to be some notification for neighbors. Because otherwise, and my other question is, that's not in here, is would we be liable? And I don't know if that's a question for you or for legal counsel or for Lonnie. Is there any liability if we do move forward with this in the municipal code and, someone does get stung by a bee and they don't have notice that the neighbors were beekeeping and, God forbid they die, but if something like that happens, would we be liable as a city? That's another consideration. Those are my questions and comments.
Okay.
Okay.
Councilmember Lister.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Let me understand correctly. Currently, the Simi Valley Municipal Code does not provide any specific beekeeping standards. In fact, it doesn't even mention it. Really, what you're sharing with us is what the standards are for general animal, farm animal enclosures. Is that pretty accurate, just to make that statement?
There actually are beekeeping requirements in the code. The city doesn't have specific ordinance that has everything all in one place.
Gotcha, okay.
So it's kind of fragmented a little bit. The staff considers beekeeping operations like farm animals.
Sure. So when it talks about animal structures, et cetera, it's just lumping beehives in with
Correct.
where you would keep, okay. You mentioned, if I heard you correctly, that the Ventura County staff is working on a possible amendment. Have they indicated what that looks like, what they're thinking?
I hadn't really talked to a planner that was directly involved with that. It was just through an initial inquiry with the county, and they had mentioned that they were in the process of working on something. If this were to get approved, or certainly we would contact the county to find out kind of where they were at and if they have anything that they could share with us.
Gotcha. And just to give maybe some context to with this discussion, last April I had several beekeepers in Simi Valley approach me and ask, and I understand that there is a beekeeping club, a little bit of an underground, I shouldn't say, we have talented beekeepers in our midst, and there's a desire to make sure that they are operating legally and in a way that is careful and above ground. Let me put it that way. And many of them also do have bees in other places outside of the city limits, et cetera. But I think that was the impetus initially for that. When you looked at Los Angeles, Santa Monica, who've had a history of, who recently changed their ordinances to allow to be more embracing of beekeeping, what was the general consensus in terms of its efficacy, of problems? Was there any kind of statements made that you thought were glaring?
Really, I found out that there really wasn't too many complaints at all. Maybe a handful per year, maybe a couple. And probably isn't all that, prevalent as far as you're not going to get tons of these requests,
Sure.
It's going to be like maybe 5 or 8
Santa Monica, you said
that.
5 to 8 in the entire huge city of Santa Monica, correct?
Right.
Is that what we're hearing?
So I don't know if that answered your question.
It does, but so you didn't, so minimal, but a complaint here or there, but not anything that's glaring in your mind.
Right, as far as I've found out in my research.
So, and if I understand the discussion we're having tonight, it's not to necessarily say this is what we want to do, this is how we should change it. The discussions tonight is just for us to decide whether we want to consider going forward with researching a possible ordinance of some kind for our city. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
What we'll be looking for is direction to staff to prepare a draft ordinance for presentation to the neighborhood council, planning commission, and then on to city council.
What brought this forward?
Councilmember Litzer asked us to take a look at this. It came to the city council.
That's right. It was a 9B request, I believe.
It was a 9B request last year. It was a 9B request last year.
Okay.
And it really was bee growth. In fact, it's kind of interesting. I had some.
Well, I don't need to hear, sorry, I was just curious where it came from.
That's where it came
That's
from.
it.
That's where it came from.
I just wanted to make a couple of quick comments. A lot of the comments that Councilmember Luevanos mentioned were a lot of my concerns also. But if we are going to be able to just move it forward with recommendations, we can address those issues, such as, to me, 50 feet's not enough. I'm working in my backyard, I've got a dog back there, and, if we've got bees right over the fence, it could be a problem. But I have no problem at least looking forward to it, to see what options we have. And I would really want the input from the neighborhood council and the planning commission also, and give the public an opportunity to speak on it. In regards to the Bee City USA, I really think that's something we could work in conjunction with the Park District on. I actually emailed one of the board of directors this afternoon. I didn't get a response yet, but just say, hey, if this is something we look at, would you guys want to possibly work with that?
And if I could share, I was going to say.
Let's,
okay.
hold on.
Yes, but
let
I
Dee
think
Dee
that's,
finish, and then if
because
you
a
want
lot
the
of this
floor.
stuff, the pollinator and all that stuff is on public and private land. They've got more public land than anybody else. And there are areas that it would be very beneficial, both for the beekeepers and for just the native plants themselves, for us to work in conjunction with them. They might even want to do a beekeepers club or some type of a organization, kind of like their Trailblazers, that wants to do that. So I think that would be a very good opportunity to maybe work in conjunction with them. So those are all my comments.
Okay, would you like the floor?
And I apologize for interrupting, Councilmember Kavanaugh, that was rude of me, I didn't mean to be that way. I was going to share, actually, I was sent Parks for Pollinators, and that, just as you were suggesting, they are reading your mind, and there is some initiative on behalf of the parks to be supportive of our pollinators, so that's all I wanted to add. So you are...
Being a former park district person, that was the first thing that came to my mind.
You were inspired.
Mayor, if I may ask
Yes.
make another comment.
Sure.
Along with what Councilmember Kavanaugh stated, the second largest landowner besides Parks and Rec is probably the school district. And so I think that we should also partner with the school district. I know that there are schools, elementary schools and high schools that have gardens in their schools, and so I think we should include them in this endeavor as well. This should be something that goes to, and I don't know I can't remember who's on the committee, the tri-agency committee that we have, where we meet with the school district and Parks and Rec and the city. But I think that's something that we should all work together, and if we want to become a bee city, we have to incorporate, like I said, I know Parks and Rec has a lot of land, but so does the school district.
We would be looking at incorporating all the jurisdictions out here, as well as the county. They have a large courthouse with several acres right here in the Civic Center. So I think we would look at putting our arms around everyone to be part of the process, and including the public, and making opportunities for the public to plant more bee-friendly plant material and things of that nature.
And I would ask that this please go to all the neighborhood councils to make sure that everyone has an opportunity.
It has to.
Yes.
It has
please.
to.
Thank you, Mayor.
My comments are, I think, shared with the other council members. I guess I would like to hear in your report, if we move forward with this, a good handle on liabilities, and what do we do about there are many people nowadays that have allergies to bees that can be quite dangerous. And so that, I understand that concern. And so being so close when you're in a single-family dwellings and the bees right over a 6-foot fence, and I don't know how you get that kind of research. I'm throwing that at you, but I'm sure there's something that talks about that. And then the liability involved of notification and what have you. I think that's an important aspect of this. The flip side of that is what we read is happening to our bee population. If at all possible, if we could safely be a part of growing this population, I think that's a prudent thing to do. So from that standpoint, I think it's best to get involved with this Bee City USA and anybody else that has expertise in this area, because I'm sure we're not the first city to look at doing this. Obviously, from the staff report, we're not. And then just out of sidebar, this city began because of bees. I mean, this was all Valencia oranges, and the way they pollinated was via bees. And as a child, I remember watching the truckloads of the beehives being brought into different orchards out here to make sure there was good pollination. So that doesn't mean it's right and we can't change, but on the other hand, I sure don't see the number of bees out here that I did as a child. And so I think it's worthy of looking into and worthy of becoming a part of doing something good, as long as it doesn't cost us something in the way of injuring people.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
If I would like to see in the report of the investigation and moving forward, where the beekeeping, where are the beekeepers located? We're a very different city than Los Angeles or Santa Monica geographically. We just are. We're like between two ridges. We're this long, narrow valley. Santa Monica is up against the ocean. Los Angeles is, like I said, you have parcels where there's equestrian zones, where there's large parcels of property. And so I'd like to see where the beekeeping is taking place. What kinds of parcels are they taking place? Are they near a certain area, or are there certain kinds of parcels where they're most likely to be placed? And if we could look at that in terms of making sure that the Planning Commission and the public has that data when they move forward in their consideration of this ordinance.
Just so I'm clear, you're looking for like a color-coded map that indicates the density of the areas where beekeeping could take place?
Yeah, or where is it taking place in Los Angeles? Where is it taking place in Santa Monica?
Oh, okay.
Like a GIS
You want the other
map?
cities?
Yeah, like where are the other cities doing it so that we can consider that when we make our decision?
Okay.
Because we have different, is it up against mountains? Is it on the floor of the valley? Is it near a water source? Like, I would just like to know so that when we consider our ordinance, we can make that we can have that information. We make better decisions when we have the data in front of us so that we can decide, if they're not getting that many complaints, but our geography is very different from Santa Monica's or Los Angeles's, then we want to mimic that, the areas of where they're having beekeeping so that we also don't get, sued or, have that many complaints as well.
There's a local, there are, I think, probably more than we realize, local beekeepers. And that would be interesting to see where they put their hives. I know for a fact out in Sagebrush, they like to do it out there. And I've seen, you're talking many, many hives. But that's probably a good resource to talk to those folks.
And the Ventura County Ag Commissioners as well, yeah.
So I think, do we need to vote on this?
I think you've given us clear direction, but
I think we're interested in moving forward and getting the research.
Yes.
And I think the liability is an issue that we want addressed. And, of course, safety.
So what I'm hearing is we'll prepare an ordinance to move forward to the Neighborhood Council, Planning Commission, and City Council. And when it gets to the City Council, we can bring forward the application for Bee City USA. It's $500. We'll let Stratus pay for it.
Thank you, Stratus.
And we can and we can research and provide that data at the same time as well. So,
okay, great.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Where are we now?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is item 8B, consideration of a social media code of conduct for City Council members. And Samantha Argabright will be presenting this item.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. The item before you is the requested code of conduct for City Council members. In developing the proposed code, staff consulted with the City Attorney's Office and reviewed policies and legal guidance related to elected officials' use of social media from organizations across the country. Documents reviewed in preparation of the draft code are attached in Exhibit 2. Staff would like to note that the draft code is intended to apply to elected officials' social media accounts only and not personal accounts that may remain private. The draft code of conduct is presented for the City Council's review and consideration, and I'm available for questions.
Okay, I read this in the first page of the staff report, if I may, Mayor, I'm sorry, I don't mean to infringe. Is that it said it's problematic to do so at this time and it can't be legally enforced. And then the rest of my question was, why do we need this? What is the purpose of this? If it's not enforceable, we already have a code of conduct. And all the things that I looked at, through this 170-page staff report, I just sat there and said, any council member can create a fake profile and violate this entire code without any ramifications. Like there's such huge loopholes to this that it really just seems, and it's not that it doesn't, bother me, but we have a code of conduct that we can use, if a council member is, acting, in a manner unbecoming the professionals that we were elected to be. So this just seems like it just seems like it's not. It seems like it would be more legal challenges than it's worth to implement, because you could have a city council member say, "Well, you're infringing on my First Amendment rights," and I see that that's what's in the first part of the very first page of the memorandum. And the second page, it says, by the city council, it states, it should be noted that conduct which violates an enforceable rule, law, or policy, whether or not on social media, and I know on here, like, it talks about the Brown Act, so there's a trigger for that. There, you can deal with the Brown Act, you call the DA, right? You call about that. In terms of whether or not it violates the code of conduct, if it's discriminatory or racist or misogynist, libelous, obscene, pornographic, all of those things have legal remedies, to which, and I'm wearing my, law school hat on. All of these things have legal remedies to them. Using the city's logo or seal, that has a legal remedy. That has a, smartphone and communication being, subject to public records request. All those things, those things already exist. It just seems like this doesn't add any more accountability to what we already have with the code of conduct. And from what I saw from the staff report, this would only be applicable to the city council members because you can't apply it to anyone else. And again, the language in the staff report, which just says that it's problematic to do so at this time because of, First Amendment protections for all individuals and city employees, including city council members, just seems like this is not something that would add any accountability. It seems like we already have that through the code of conduct. And of course, elections, because we are held as elected officials, we are held accountable to the public through elections. So if the public does not like, what we post or what we say or how we act, then they vote us out of office. That's the accountability measures that we have, that the public has to us as elected officials. That's how we are held accountable to the public. So, those were my comments on that, because that was the first thing that came to my head. Anyone can make a fake profile and violate every single one of these, and there would be no ramifications for that. So I just don't see, as much as I want us to behave professionally as the elected officials that we are supposed to be, but there are already accountability measures for that in the code of conduct and through elections, that we are held to that standard. And furthermore, we have had issues with social media, and they have been handled through the code of conduct, and through the public that has given public comments. So it's not that there isn't an accountability measure already in place for these things. There's legal measures through the DA, through the public, through public comments, through the code of conduct. And through the election process. So it's like there's all these layers already in place for accountability. So I don't see that this would add anything. I know there's guidelines there, and that, their consideration is you should think about these guidelines before you post that. But again, anyone with malicious intent could go in, make a fake profile and say, my name is, Johnny Smith or whatever, and then just violate every single one of these codes of conduct without any ramifications whatsoever. And that's just the social media age in which we live in right now. I would hope that we would all, and I know that Mayor Mashburn at one of our city council meetings had all of us go around and sign the code of conduct again. Is that correct, Mayor Mashburn? That we all re-signed the code of conduct?
Yes.
At one of the meetings, so we all, recommitted, to upholding that and adhering to that. So those are my comments on this.
Mr. Mayor, I have some comments on this too.
I'm sorry?
I have some comments on this too.
Okay, go ahead.
If I could. I just want to say right now, I agree 100% with Councilmember Levinos on this. So I don't understand why we're undertaking this issue at this point. Also, there's a lot of other things in here that, like, there's no affiliation, in my opinion, between a council member's public page and their private page. There is no assigned city page to any of our council members. No, we don't have any assigned city page to each council member. The city has its own page. But a lot of council members have created pages that just deal with public service announcements and the such for the city of Simi Valley. So that would be considered a public page, whereas our private pages, again, First Amendment, we post whatever we want to post on our private page. If it comes under a code of conduct violation, then it will be addressed there. That's the only comments I had. I'm concerned about there not having enough delineation between public and private. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm actually the one that requested this to come forward. I do think it's important. You did a great job in your background and all the information you gave us. It was very, very interesting to see different states, different cities, and how they did it. I think we can condense this a little bit. I know you gave us everything you wanted. I don't feel that it's not necessary. Yes, anyone could go in and make a fake page, but the idea behind this is that we as our council member pages. So when I have a council member page, I say I'm a politician, and the general public assumes everything I put on there is city related. And so I think we need to have some type of guidelines on that. Every private sector company has a social media policy, and it's basically to protect their employees, and it's to protect the entity itself from bad publicity. So, but I do agree that we do have to draw a line between the personal page and the politician page, because your First Amendment rights on your personal page, you can do whatever you want there, and that's pretty much what some of the concerns were. But if we're titling our page City Council Member, I think I have a responsibility to the city to watch what I post there, to make sure that it's on a positive note towards the city, that there is nothing in there that's non-factual or that could be offensive to a person of reason, which is how we normally describe it, to a person of reason. And I think it would give people a better idea as to what's expected of them on their social media, especially to new members. We do mention the thing about Brown Act. Some people might not understand how a Brown Act violation could occur using their social media until they become, until it's happened or something. This also indicates that we don't use the city's logo or seal on anything. Our code of conduct itself, I don't know, it does somewhat to a certain degree say that, but this is basically saying you don't do it on your social media also. I like what you did here. I would condense it down so that it's not quite as cumbersome, or because you covered every aspect. You did a great job, Samantha.
Thanks.
So you covered every aspect. And or if the council would like, we can just implement, if you don't like to go to a separate social media policy, some of this could be implemented into our current code of conduct policy. But times have changed. I feel we need to have a social media policy. So that's my comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Litzner.
So if I understand this report, and I'm reading, while staff's research was not able to identify another public organization that maintained a formal social media policy. So you were not able to find any other public entity that has a social media policy. That you found guidelines.
Correct.
And recommendations, but not a policy that was set in stone that...
What I found typically were social media policies that applied to all employees, and then there might be like a section that applied to city council members, but it was like guidelines. It wasn't necessarily the same teeth of a policy for elected officials.
And I'm conflicted because I do not in any way want to infringe on our First Amendment rights. I also am very mindful that our Code of Ethics is very clear about what is appropriate behaviors, and much of what we can and do and should do on social media is contained therein. If I'm hearing Councilmember Kavanaugh, you suggested maybe we could take some of these elements and throw them into our Code of Ethics or Code of Conduct, and maybe that would help illuminate specifics when it comes to social policy, or I guess or social media. I guess what's interesting to me is that as I recognize that our most recent frustrations of behaviors all have been on that social media platform. And so I think that is why we're at this point, which is interesting. But if it doesn't have teeth, which as I'm hearing it really doesn't, it's open to conjecture and interpretation, should we be spending our time to doing this? And so I'm conflicted.
Okay, I'll give you my comments. And
Please.
if you need more time, we'll certainly give it to you. I feel that we're all mature adults up here, and there's a lot of things that we should know just by the way we've been brought up on what to do and what not to do. I do like the idea that Councilmember Kavanaugh says that in the Code of Ethics that maybe define the difference between a personal page and the political page. And the purpose I see of that is I think this council's starting to get a good handle on it, what it is, and we understand. But we have to remember we're also doing this for future council members, and it would give them a point of reference. But I don't think we need to go into such great detail as what was originally proposed. I think just this is what a political page is, and here's your responsibilities, very quick, brief bullet points. And then your personal page is First Amendment rights, blah, blah, blah. You can do what you want. I think that the thing that I try remembering is we're council members, no matter where we are. If we're in bed asleep, we're council members. If we get up in the morning and have breakfast with the family, we're council members. I truly don't believe that we can change hats and say, well, right now I'm not a council member, I'm going to do my own thing. No, we're viewed differently. That doesn't mean this document has to represent every step of that, but I think that's something that we need to remember. And I see just guidelines as the difference between a political page and a private page. In other words, there's way too much here. We asked way too much of staff, or staff put a lot of work into this, and I think I agree with Councilmember Luevanos. It's too easily abused or challenged. So we need very broad guidelines. Does that give staff enough information to bring something back? Or did we thoroughly confuse you?
Well, honestly, the only thing I'm thinking is if you want to amend the current Code of Ethics to incorporate some of this, we could identify of the 19, which ones you feel could summarize conduct on social media. We could identify 5, 8, 9, although somewhat duplicate of the code of conduct. So we could take whatever is more of a generalized statement and include that into the code of ethics and bring that back for the council to
That's what I would like
re-adopt.
to see. That's what I'd like to see.
And I think I would like to reiterate what Mayor Pro Tem Judge mentioned, that there's a difference between your personal social media account and your, and I know that we can never take our council member hats off, but, you know, there is a price to pay for even having a social media page, and having gotten multiple and still continue to get threats, death threats, on my official social media account, the city councilwoman, the Ruth Luevanos city council member page. Anytime I even post anything in Spanish, which I do because I know that we do not have the staff available to translate everything, so I do that as a service. If I spoke Farsi, I would translate it to Farsi. If I spoke, you know, Arabic, I would translate to Arabic, but I speak Spanish. So when I post things in Spanish, I inevitably always get things, and I have to leave it on there I will, Facebook, it gets reported to Facebook, and they see it's a threat, and they'll delete it. So to some extent, there is, some social media policing that's already done, via Facebook because of that. But, I can't, we can't remove things that are on our official social media accounts, but they are just intended to provide that, provide information to the public, like cooling centers, and we're all in different committees. So, Councilmember Kavanaugh has information about, the rescue animal center, and, Councilmember Lister has information on the Council on Aging, and, we all go to different committees, so we all bring forth different information that we don't necessarily have time to go through the city and post it there, so we would post it on our official, city council pages. So I think it's worth having those pages because of all the committees that we sit on, and we bring this information to the public, which is important. So I don't want to have a chilling effect on free speech of us to be able to share pertinent, valid information with the public. So I want there to be a differentiation between, your official city council page and your personal city council page.
If I could maybe add something on that, I don't know if you guys can hear with this mic. 2 cases last year came down on social media in the East Coast. Both social media, like one was Facebook, one was Twitter, big cases, 4th Circuit and 2nd Circuit. They both said when you have an official page, and it doesn't seem to matter whether that's city supported or whether you put it up yourself and you're starting to call it official. It sounds like some of the council members have that or have thought about doing those or update them. All the city rules on First Amendment apply to that, even city liability. So you got to be careful. And I guess to the extent there maybe is a distinction between those, maybe that should be something to consider as far as realizing, hey, if I have an official page, even if I don't use city support for it, a lot of these rules can now attach to that forum. And so that's an issue that maybe hasn't been fleshed out for these 2 cases are fairly new, fought all the way up to the Court of Appeals. In both cases, the officials involved tried to make it no city support, but they did put, such as supervisor, and then they would invite only the dialogue on county issues. The court said, it's an official page. That means you can't ban people. You have to use those city-type policies, and sort of like almost a forum like this, a limited public forum. So that is something that maybe some guidance could be given to the council members and others who create these official pages, realizing that even if you don't have city support, people could sue the city for what happens on those pages. Versus your private page, as the staff report says, First Amendment is the main judge there.
Could we get, could we get that case law? Could we get that, before we, consider more of this, I would like to
Well, I
see
can
that.
certainly give the case law, but I mean, and I'm happy to do so. But even more than that, it's a new awareness that you can have a private page that says official, or you're acting like it's an official page, and now it turns into effectively like a city page without city support. And there's a liability angle there. And so the behavior of someone on an official page has got to be different from a private page. And that's separate and apart from a campaign page, which again is something completely perhaps separate from all that.
What I did not see in this that I would like to see, if we decide to, if the council decides to, if we decide to do this, is something about not posting any information about minors. If it's a 12-year-old or 16-year-old putting their address or their name or their age or things like that, that deeply concerns me, is not doing that, explicitly without parent permission or, without, that concerns me because,
That's number 8.
Oh, it's number 8?
8B.
Where's it? Sorry.
And because you won't necessarily know whether they're a minor or not.
That's just anyone.
So, yeah, exactly.
You have
I've
no
seen
idea who you're
things
talking to.
posted by minors that
Yeah.
you would not necessarily know that.
But
So-
again, but there's, even without, I'm sorry, Lonnie, even without, did those cities have a social media policy in place already or not?
I don't think there was I can't say for sure. I doubt it. I also, like staff, was not able to find a clear policy that is like the one that's being proposed here, which is sort of surprising given the number of cities in the whole country, including California. So, take that as you will, but it's probably in part because social media is new. I mean, it doesn't seem new, but this aspect of it's a little bit new. And those two cases that I cited come just from 2019. And so it's been sort of hotly contested whether a privately owned but maintained, saying, official page of an elected official could be considered an official page of the city, and the case law seems to say yes, it could. So to the extent the council members are being careful on those pages to treat them in a very formal manner, that's certainly advisable.
So what I'm hearing in this discourse, if I may, Mayor, is that if we are going to modify or do something, it needs to be very specific about it, because I agree, what we have right here, it's not clear whether it's speaking about just our general media, social media usage, or our official social media usage. So what I'm hearing is that for the protection of the city even, it might be appropriate to have some brief but succinct guidelines for council members who choose to have an official city page.
That's probably something to consider.
So would we be better off to segment it and start with just that address? Because I think we all have our own political page. And if we just ask staff to address the behavior on that political page.
Are you talking, when you say political, Mayor, do you mean campaign, like for re-election, or do you mean the official city council? Because then, you're going down that slippery slope there too,
Yeah, no, you're right. And that's what I'm hoping we can get defined in that, because, okay, use me for example. Right now, I kind of consider it a campaign page. However, I still will put out what I think is valuable information to whomever's reading it. That's the kind of guidance that I think I would need. So does that mean I should have a formal political page as the mayor, and then campaign is entirely separate, and that's what legal might come up with? And then I would have to start a different page.
And I would ask that we again go to we are members of the California League of Cities and the National League of Cities, and we as far as I know, and I believe Council Member Litzer, you were trained as well when you were appointed to office. So we all went through the training, and I believe, or at least when I went to the training, and I know when Council Member Litzer went to the training, they had a whole workshop just on social media policy, the do's and the don'ts. So I would say that we look to them for guidance in terms of, what they believe. And unfortunately, when I came back from that training, I sat down with Lonnie, because I said a lot of the questions that I had, they were like, ask your city attorney, ask your city attorney, ask your city attorney. And so I sat down with Lonnie and I had a long conversation about, where do we stand on this? And now with this new case law, it just seems like we need more information.
I'm sorry. Exhibit 2 is the National League of Cities social media policies, their recommended guidelines and policies.
And they're very
fairly
long.
extensive.
Yes.
But it does provide that. It's 8 pages, does provide that information.
But they were generalized, but then everything that they presented was like, here's the training, here's what you should do and what you shouldn't do. But then after that, they were like, but speak to your city, your city attorney to see what your city does.
They didn't give good answers, or
Yeah.
firm answers when I went through it. I mean, it's been several years, but it was confusing, because they said one thing and then we did it entirely different.
And with the case law evolving, things change all the time, so.
One difference, for example, is if you have official pages, whether it's city-supported or whether you do it on your own, that issue of what you call yourself and the use of the logo can be addressed directly. In other words, it could say, all right, here's how you're supposed to do that, and then you'll know if I'm making an official, I think, Mr. Mayor, it's what you call political, but I think what is meant is official versus campaign being, all the case law points towards don't do campaign stuff on anything official, whether here or on websites. So I think it's probably literally coming down to 3 social media presences if you want an official, a private personal, and maybe a campaign.
That's what I'm
That's kind of what we're seeing just as this develops. I think the league, they're not pulling punches, but it's so new they don't want to maybe put out a definitive guide yet, unfortunately. To that.
Right, because that's not something that we've traditionally done. It's been, if you have an official page, I have similar stuff with like the mayor, where I've put out some endorsements on my official page, and that wasn't something that we were told we could not do, but I did see that it's recommended in a lot of places as I was reading this. So it was very informative, some of the information he gave us.
So how about if we consider backing off and ask staff to research the 3-page, meaning political, campaign, and personal, and give us some guidance on that.
Well, yes, and ultimately, and actually, for the reason, maybe because I've been more recently trained, I do have 3 pages, the election and et cetera. But I think ultimately the page that we need guideline on is specifically the official page of the official representation of the city page. Mm-hmm. What we do with our campaign, what we do with our personal, those are all free speech, I think, protected and not to be, we just need to operate in our best of.
I think you're right, but I would still like to have them look at especially the campaign page to make sure we don't stumble there.
Well, I'm sorry. There's one thing you can do is you can change the title on the page.
Right.
Facebook has to approve that, but because I had it, mine originally was elect me type thing, and then I changed it once I was elected. But I could change it now back to a campaign title. So I don't know if that's something that is playing the rules, or whether that would be something acceptable.
And we need answers like, someone says something very derogatory or what have you, and you delete them. Can you delete them?
No, I haven't deleted anything. I've not done that.
Not on your official page, but and I can't speak to, I know I've been here longer than Councilwoman Litzer, but not as long as Councilmember Kavanaugh. So, the training that I got, and I can't speak to, the training that any of the rest of you received, was very clear in terms of from the National League of Cities and the California League of Cities, which was, do not do any campaigning on your official Facebook page. So there should be 3 pages. There should be, and maybe that's something that we put into the code of conduct, that you should have if you want to have an official city council page, as an elected official to push information out, then this is what the guidelines for that. And then your campaign, you should never do any campaigning on your official, city council page, and then your personal one is separate. But any of those, like you said, Mayor, you mentioned earlier, you kind of never take the council member hat off, no matter where you go. So, you still would be subject to that code of conduct for your personal and your campaign pages. But in terms of guidelines, in terms of, your official city council page, I think that would be something that would be feasible.
I think what we can do is we can, we've got some good direction here. We can bring back a somewhat revised policy, guideline, code, whatever we're going to call it, with some recommendations. I think clearly having the 3 pages, scaling down some of the recommendations we have of the 19, scaling that down to what should be pertinent to council conduct on the city, on your official page, in light of what the city's regulations are, and we can bring something back for the council to chew on.
And then if, when this comes back, I would, and, when and if it's approved, I would love for this to be included as part of the, when I got elected, I got like this training manual, like brand new, they had just made. I guess they hadn't made one before, everything was word of mouth, but I got like these 2 manuals, and it had all the stuff, and there should be a section on social media, like, hey, this is how you handle social media, so just so you know. I was afraid to even give public comment once I was elected, but I hadn't been, sworn in yet. And I was like, I can't say anything, because I didn't want to even have the appearance of impropriety or bias, even though I knew I had been elected. I wasn't officially on the dais yet. So I think those are the kinds of guidelines that we need to provide in the future for whoever gets elected in the future.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Do we need a motion for this?
I know that's a lot of work, but it's
I apologize, Samantha. You did a great job on it, though. Gave us a lot of information. Thank you.
Okay. Next item.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is 9A, City Council member reports.
Okay, who wants to begin tonight? Me first. I knew you'd volunteer.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Mashburn. I know that we all have been attending the Ventura County elected official COVID-19 meetings on Wednesdays, so I'm not going to go over that. On September 1st, I was at the Youth Council meeting, and we had, a request for social media policy requests, ironically. Speaking of social media, they're going to ask for Twitter, and they're going to ask for, they already have Instagram, but they're going to ask for Twitter and Facebook, just to reach out to the different generations. And I guess there's a preference for different people in terms of how they communicate via social media. But they did have an online event, and they're going to have more online activities to connect people, to connect our youth until we do go back to school. So I highly encourage you all to follow the Youth Council on Instagram, and hopefully soon on Facebook and Twitter. On Thursday, September 3rd, I attended the Clean Power Alliance meeting, and we approved 2 15-year power purchase agreements for solar storage. We're slowly getting towards the state requirements of how much renewable energy we need to have by 2025. We need to have a certain percentage of renewable energy. So we're slowly upping it a bit at a time. This took another chunk, like another 5.8%. You can see the agendas on you just Google Clean Power Alliance agendas, and you can see them there. We also established a fiscal stabilization fund because we had saved some money, and so we wanted to make sure it was available in case there's anything dire happens. Because there's so much economic uncertainty right now, so we just want to make sure we have kind of a backup, kind of like a reserve. So that was my Clean Power Alliance meeting. On Thursday, September 10th, I attended the Ventura Council of Governments, the VCOG meeting, and there's a lot, so I apologize, it's going to be a little lengthy. But the State of the County address, I want to invite everyone. The State of the County address is at 1 p.m. on September 17th, this Thursday. So if you would like, just look up State of the County, Google it, you'll find it. But you can please attend, and they talk about all the kinds of things that are going on right now with COVID and the economy and businesses and all that stuff. So make sure that you tune in on Thursday at 1 p.m. They are asking for feedback from the public for the Ventura County Transportation Commission. If you go to www.goventura.org/101 communities, and I do have that on my official City Council Facebook page, to give feedback, and you can find it on the Ventura County website as well. You have until this Friday, September 18th, to give input on the 101 corridor. So I know that a lot of people from the Simi Valley commute or live or visit family and friends along the 101. So if you want to chime in on any of those issues, you can see the plan there. You have until Friday to give input, and it's in multiple languages. So if you just click on language, you can do it in Spanish and Tagalog and any other language you want to respond in. And they are starting a freeway support program, so similar to what LA County has, where if your car breaks down in the middle of, rush hour in the morning or in the evening, starting in December, the county will have that program as well. So if your car breaks down, there'll be, FSP program, like a towing company will come and, give you gas or fix your tire or whatever, just to get traffic going. And that will be starting in December, just so you know. We also gave a grant to the Family Justice Center at California Lutheran University. The hope is that by getting all the data from the services the Family Justice Center deals with, which can be anything from emotional abuse and sexual abuse and family trauma and all those things, that by getting that data, the hope is that in the future, we can use that data to apply for more grants, and then they can expand the program to have several Family Justice Centers throughout the county. And they do a wonderful service through the Family Justice Center. So we approve that. We also talked about REAP, which is the Regional Early Action Program. SCAG, which is the Southern California Association of Governments, gave $432,000 for Ventura County. That will be distributed to all 11 jurisdictions or cities in Ventura County. And that is to help us with our RENA plan. And two of the major things that are coming down from the state that are new that we have to contend with and make sure is in our plan is affirmative fair housing, which is putting the onus on us as jurisdictions, as municipalities, to make sure that we have housing for our low income, for our working families, for our very low income. So no longer is it, are they saying, oh, you can just postpone and wait. No, you have to do it. It has to be in your plan. You have to have a plan for this low income housing and very low income housing and make sure that everyone has a place to live in your city. The second thing that is also part of that is the VMTs, which is vehicle miles traveled. And so I wanted to bring this up in my report because I know we had talked about bringing fiber optics to the city, and one of the things that impacts the vehicle miles traveled, and that's also why I requested the Wi-Fi boosting at the library earlier, is because the access to technology, especially when so many people are telecommunicating now, and so many employers are realizing that, hey, I don't need you to come into the office 5 days a week. You can work, 2 days a week, in the office and 3 days at home. But you can only do that if you have access to a stable technology and access to the internet. So our way of dealing with vehicle miles traveled can be offset. We can reduce the number of vehicle miles traveled of people commuting by making sure we have access to the technological infrastructure here in the city by having fiber optics. So that is a good investment of our time, and I brought it up, and I was so glad that it was brought up here, was to install fiber optic throughout the city so we have these technology corridors and have places so that people can not have to commute all the way to Oxnard or Santa Monica to do their jobs. And many people are realizing now during the pandemic that they are able to do a good chunk of their work from home. Not everyone. You can't, be a cashier from home, but there are a lot of jobs that are realizing that you can do that. So that will impact us. Because we will get a chunk of that money. Maybe part of that money we can use for applying for grants for the technology infrastructure to reduce our vehicle miles traveled. So that's the REAP. And then the VCOG dinner was postponed to June because of what's happening right now with the pandemic. So we're hoping that we can postpone it to June, and then you'll all be invited to come to the VCOG dinner. And that is my report. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Litzner.
Thank you. I know that we have all been attending our Wednesday county elected official reports, and I'll have something to say about that later in 9B because I do want us to take some specific actions. Also on Wednesdays, I've been attending our the chamber. Well, it's actually it's a collaborative with our Chamber of Commerce and with our county board of supervisor and city, et cetera, where we are a task force on business recovery, where truly there's concerns about our businesses, and we've been listening to reports of businesses that are on the verge of leaving our city, et cetera, because of COVID problems and not ability to be open. And so they are taking and looking at every way they possibly can to encourage state and county officials to find ways to be creative that they can still be safety compliant but reopen. And so I think we as a city need to be very mindful of that and start really lobbying our county and state officials to really do something that at this point it's become way too long, and in fact I was going to say it later, 9B, but I think maybe now would be an appropriate time, as we discussed in that task force and also on those elected official calls. We are compliant in every way as a county as far as being on the metrics that the state wants. In fact, I printed this off literally before I walked out of into the chambers tonight because I wanted to see where we are as far as our percent of ventilators. We're at 86%. The goal is 25%. As far as our average daily testing rate, the goal is 150. We're at 243. As a percentage of ICU beds currently available, the goal is 20%. We are at 39%. The change in 3-day average COVID-19 hospitalization patients, the goal is 10%. We are down, fallen 11%. Our positivity test rate, the goal is 8%. We're at 4.4%. We are doing superlative in all areas. The one area is that 7-day average case rate per 100,000. 8 appears to be the threshold that keeps us in that purple level. We are at 8. 7.9 theoretically takes us out of there, and this says we're at 8. The only reason we're at 8 is because we are being so diligent in our testing, and so we as a city need to, I think, continue to lobby the county and the state to understand mathematics, and it's because we're doing so well in other areas that we are being penalized, and our businesses should not be hurt because of that. Going forward with also my activities, on Thursday, September the 3rd, I attended the SCAG Energy and Environment Committee meeting via Zoom. They spent quite a bit of time talking about the 2020-2024 Regional Transportation Connect SoCal plan and how it was modified, but how it is still going forward, and that comes up with arena numbers, et cetera, that Councilmember Levinos was mentioning. One of the things I chose to share as a letter that was written to that, I chose to write a letter to that agency that I think we need to really examine what's going on with our power shutoffs. As we're aware, on the weekend of August 14th, a stage 3 emergency was declared, and millions of Californians experienced electrical power shutoffs during that huge heat wave. And so as a committee, I challenged them that they look at why what's the cause of it. I know we need to become green and that we have these green mandates, but there's a variety of potential causes that I outlined that could have been a cause of it, and some of it may be our changing of energy source. Anyway, so I'm hopeful that the committee will further investigate what is causing those power shutoffs, because yes, we need to be mindful of green energy, but we cannot have people and our elderly crippled and injured and dying because of lack of power. In fact, I quoted Lance Hastings, the president of the California Manufacturers and Technology Association, when he said, "Hot weather and a cloudy day should not be able to shut down the 5th largest economy in the world." While we support California's renewable energy goals, we absolutely need system redundancy to allow us to continue to operate and manufacture products for residents in the world. So I appreciate sitting on that committee, and we'll continue with reports from there. On Saturday, September 5th, I'd like to commend the Kiwanis for their food drive that was exceptional, where they collected food at locations throughout our city. Kathy Van Etten, Karen Hoyle, and others with the Kiwanis really stepped up and had a wonderful collection drive, and I appreciate that all of the food that was collected will be going directly to our citizens of Simi Valley through various sources, distribution channels. And so I wanted to also thank the residents of Simi Valley who have done so much to contribute on that date. So thank you very much. On Thursday, September the 10th, I appreciated meeting with our city manager, Brian Gabler. I also had the opportunity of meeting with Ventura leadership, Melissa Miller and her team, and it was a group of outstanding people who are part of the Ventura County Leadership Training Program, who are not familiar or not connected to Simi Valley in any way, and they were asking questions about what is hot in Simi Valley, and it was lovely for me to have the opportunity to have that discussion and share my thoughts about what that was. Also on that evening, Councilmember Mike Judge and I had the opportunity of interviewing applicants for neighborhood council number 2, and there were some very outstanding applicants, and we appreciate that opportunity. Final thing is today, and I know the mayor may speak to that because he was there in person, but there was a virtual ribbon cutting for George and Penny Holmes, who, after 41 years of having the Beautiful Homes business, where they have put together framing and for people all over the city. They are retiring and will be moving, but I wanted to wish them our best and thank them for all that they've done for our city and through the many years. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I attended all the Wednesday elected phone calls. I think that'll be enough. That's all I'll say on that one. That was, so every Wednesday from the last meeting till current. On Sunday, August 30th, I had the pleasure, or not the pleasure, the honor of attending the celebration of life for our former mayor, Greg Stratton. It was wonderful. His daughter, Delora, and her husband, Jim, hosted it in the backyard outside, social distancing. Had some really nice people speak, including our own mayor. And it was really nice to hear a lot of the things that our former council member, mayor, and school trustee has done for our city. It was a beautiful event. And I know Delora and Edie were very happy that everyone attended and shared their experiences with them. On Wednesday, September 2nd, after our calls, I had the EDC Executive Board meeting. There's a lot going on these days, obviously, with the COVID situation. The EDC is busier than they've ever been. They have a lot of things going on. We have our regular board meeting coming up, so I'll have more notations on that, get into a little bit more details. But I would advise people right now, there is a free webinar schedule on the EDC website. It's edccollaborative.com. Please go there and look at all the free webinars that they have available. It's amazing the help you can get from them. It's a very dedicated board. It's a very dedicated staff. They have extra funding that you don't know about. They have ways to help you get those loans you need. They will help you with PPP forgiveness. There's a lot of things that they will do. So please go out to the edccollaborative.com website. And I do believe they also have it in Spanish too. So on Saturday, September 5th, I also went by the Kiwanis Food Drive. Our Kiwanis clubs do a great job in our community. It was one of the hottest days ever, and they were out there. They had it all set up. I wanted to say kudos to Nell Ann Wilson. Nell Ann's the president this year. I know Nell Ann from years ago doing Relay for Life, and her and her husband do a lot of participation and volunteering within our community. But it was a great event. They collected a lot of food. Then in September 13th, this morning, the 14th. We don't have Monday on our calendar. I also attended the virtual goodbye to George and Penny Holmes. George and I go way back to Simi Valley days, so he's been a fixture here in Simi Valley for many, many a year. I'm very happy for him and Penny. They are moving to the Philippines, where Penny is from. They have a lot of family there, a beautiful new home. I'm very excited for their retirement. They will be missed tremendously, but I know it's a good move for them to be around family and friends. And finally, on a personal note, I just want to say something, embarrass my sister the heck. My sister Barbara's turning 60 later this week, and I just wanted to wish her a happy 60th birthday. So that's it. Thank you.
Good for you. Happy birthday.
She'll kill me.
Mayor Pro Tem Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My calendar is pretty much the same as everybody else's. On Saturday, August 29th, I did attend the Greg Stratton funeral over at the Pioneer Cemetery, where he was interned. Later that night on Saturday, I did attend the Corona Cruise Night, which is a new thing here in Simi Valley, created by a father for his daughter who didn't like being cooped up because of the pandemic. So people get in their cars, family members to a car, and drive around the city on the Saturday nights. It's a pretty neat thing. Sunday, August 30th, I attended Greg Stratton's celebration of life at his daughter's house too. Greg Stratton, great mayor, great person in our city, and a person that will definitely be missed. On Thursday, September 3rd, I attended the SCAG Transportation Committee meeting and also the Regional Council. Like most people have said earlier, a couple people have already talked about SCAG, but we did pass the Connect SoCal plan, which includes the arena numbers, a lot of other things for our region. Again, I think our arena numbers that were given to us through this process are better than we could have gotten, so that's a positive. There was one interesting thing that happened during the Transportation Committee that I really wanted to touch on, and I'm going to try and bring back a presentation about this later on. I've already told VCTC I would too, is California is developing a new way for municipalities to do speed limits. Instead of going with the 85th percentile, they're looking at a whole other way to do it. So I know we had a lot of issues trying to lower speed limits on streets we thought were going too fast. This should be able to help us out in the future. So I will be trying to bring this presentation to the entire council in the future. Saturday, September 5th, I did attend the Kiwanis Food Drive. I drove by there and dropped off some food, said hi to Councilmember Lister, and said hi to all the Kiwanians there. Great job. appreciate everything they're doing for people that need it. On moving right along. On Thursday, September 10th, as Councilmember Lister pointed out, we participated in picking people for Neighborhood Council 2. Outstanding candidates. Can't say anything more than that. They were all outstanding. On September 11th, I attended the VCTC meeting. We are talking about regional transportation. That's going to be on the next agenda for VCTC, so I look forward to that discussion. September 12th, Saturday, I once again attended the Corona Cruise, because it's every Saturday night. I didn't go all three, but I went 2 of them. And again, it was well attended by a lot of people in town, and everybody's welcome to these things. And today I also was at the virtual ribbon cutting for George and Penny Holmes, and I will miss George and Penny. George did a couple of things for me, and one of them's hanging in my office there at City Hall. Going to miss them a lot. Wish them well in the Philippines. That's my report.
Thank you. Let's see. I'm going to break this up. But first of all, tonight we did a proclamation on suicide, and I've been thinking about that ever since we did it. And having been a first responder for some 30 years, I went on many different suicide cases, a wide variety of ages, and the impact that has on a family is just incredible. It's just horrendous. And so I just wanted to bring it up again so we pay attention to, and I'm not a mental health expert by any stretch, but I certainly subscribe to the thing of if you see something that appears wrong or see somebody that needs to be talked to, talk to them, and if you can't do it, go find somebody that can, because it seems like this is something that's increasing in numbers during this pandemic, and anything we can do to put a stop to it will not only help the individual involved, but obviously the family involved and the friends that are involved. So I really encourage folks to keep an eye out and do whatever they think is correct to bring this to light. I attended the elected officials conference calls. I won't give the date of each one. On Friday, August 28th, I attended the Southern California Edison Government Advisory Panel. And I think pretty much what I got out of that meeting was that the Edison has this new, their conductor, which is your power lines. And I brought to the council some time ago a sample of it, but it's their conductor that's insulated. And that'll go, will make a major difference in fire cause when it comes to TLC, they call it. That's tree line contact. And when you have a line that is not insulated come into contact with a tree, you instantly get sparks and debris falling into the tree and maybe to the ground below. And with this new type of conductor, that won't occur. The problem is, I think, is that it's limited, it's very expensive, and Edison has about 55,000 miles of lines, and they're different sizes. So it's going to take some time before they're actually going to make a major dent in their system to be able to say that now we're really starting to make headway on stopping some of these fires. We talked about the power shutoffs, and a lot of discussion. They're looking at ways to run circuits around and divert to where they could shut off their troubled area but not shut off people that need electricity. That's in the works, that's in the studies. They are at least talking about doing that and trying to address those issues. On Thursday, September 10th, I was an official brown bag lunch speaker for Royal High School. And so I let them know right away why they should have gone to Simi High School. But it was a very good discussion. Brian Dennert was the moderator, and he left kind of wide open, talk what you want to talk about. And so I tried describing, what we do and update the students. Got a lot of great questions from them, and had a good time doing that. On Wednesday, September 9th, had a meeting with a group of Simi Solidarity people and the police chief, and we had a long discussion, and I think it was a positive meeting, and we'll see some growth going from there. The other thing I wanted to talk about real briefly is those of you who know a retired police department employee, he was a PSA, Mike Apiza, has been quite ill and had to do a couple surgeries, somewhat unexpected. Fortunately, this morning I was able to FaceTime with him, and he's done a turnaround like you can't believe. We were very, very concerned about Mike, and today he was himself giving us a hard time, so we knew he was feeling better because he was letting us have it with both barrels. So get well, Mike Apiza. And that's the end of my report. Next item is 9B.
Mayor, I have two requests. The first one is for, it was mentioned earlier, the Golden State. We had asked for this on a 9B, previous 9B request, and I'm wondering when it's going to come back. I know that, I'm not sure if I asked and Councilmember Lister seconded it or vice versa, I'm not sure. But we had asked for a report to look into buying out Golden State Water, and that would address the Pomona litigation as well. But I want to know when that's coming back, because we did ask for that quite a while ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll have to check. I don't have I know staff's been working on it. They may actually have completed the report, but I can shoot you guys an email and let you know.
And time is of the essence, because I know there are statutes of limitations on litigation as well.
Well,
So,
let me just say for that, if the council wants, I can just, it sounds like I so far heard a lot of interest in whatever this case is and how it might apply. That's separate from taking over Golden State, even though they may be linked in some way. But I'm happy to analyze whatever happened there and send you something privately. And then if you want to agendize that specific thing.
Well, if we can, and I'm asking you, I would like to have it at a council meeting publicly in the name of transparency, because we had so many people ask about that report. So if there's any reason we can't do it, I understand. However, if we could just discuss it at a council meeting, I think that would be most appropriate.
We can do that. And if there's anything that would have to be private, I can still send that privately.
Okay.
And you can choose at that time to obviously waive any litigation privileges you might have. But I wouldn't recommend that yet till you know what those might be.
Yeah.
The only concern I have on the Pomona versus QM is it's still working its way through the court system. Mm-hmm. The lower court has made a decision, and it was appealed up. So any discussion may be premature. The lower court's decision did not go favorably to the city of Pomona. So it may be beneficial to, and the city attorney can provide an analysis of where it's at as of today.
Give us an update on where it's at.
Maybe we can send you something, but having an open discussion might be premature when we don't know what the appellate court is going to do yet.
well, it seemed like the concern was from the comments that were given, public comments, that it seemed like the concern was with the safety of the water and the number of perchlorates and the perchlorate level that are in the water that our Golden State Water customers are receiving. And I have been to, at least a couple of hearings for the water board where they have the district water board where they have contradicted themselves in terms of, how much groundwater they're using and the level of perchlorates and where they're coming from. So that's why we had asked, and I know that was the comment that was made, and those were public comments that were made previously months ago, and that's why Councilmember Lister and I had asked about, a report or an investigation, something with regard to, what is the possibility or feasibility of buying out Golden State Water, to have some level of accountability and to make sure that, everyone has equal water rates. And I know that was when we had that discussion, was when we were talking about the water rates, but to make sure that everyone has the same water rates, that there is equitability, and that there's also safety in terms of the water, which seems to be the concerns that were brought up in the public comments.
Okay, let me get you an update on the timing of that.
Definitely separate issues on that one case versus if you want to bring back buying out Golden State or something like that. So they're
Okay.
So I don't know if that's a 9B request, but I just want to know where that is and if we can bring that back. My second request is the one that I've gotten from many, many residents that have asked me repeatedly of the possibility of having a civilian oversight commission for our police department. I know that Los Angeles has it, Long Beach has it. There's a number of cities that have a civilian oversight commission. I don't want to give any details or, into the specifics, but I would just like to look at the possibility.
We'll be. Okay. You don't have to put something down.
No, I'm just reinforcing what I said during the calendaring section. Just want to be sure that we are proactively representing our businesses that have still been closed after 6-7 months, whether it be our tattoo parlors or our nail salons that are up and outside, et cetera.
So I can, a brief update, as far as the city attorney let me go, is the county is petitioning the state now because of the high level of testing that is happening to try and get that to be taken into consideration for us moving from purple to red. So that discussion is currently happening now between the county and the state. Because those numbers
which is excellent. And if there's anything the city can do to say we
are, the CEO knows that this, at least this city and I'm sure the other 9 are fully supportive of their efforts. The county just did clear tending booths today. So progress is made slowly, but we're making progress.
I did just want to mention with regard to that, and what the county stated is that canvassing is not allowed. I know it's the political, but you're not allowed to knock door to door for whatever candidate or proposition. That is not allowed under the Ventura County orders for COVID. So if anyone is knocking on your door and trying to give you, political literature or sell you something or whatever, like that's not allowed. I just wanted to reiterate that because I did get various complaints of people saying, oh, people are knocking on my door, and I'm like, why? Why are people knocking on my door?
Just to be sure, this is all like in service of whether you need to bring back something on 9B, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh, sorry. I'm just sharing out what happened on my calendar. I'm sorry.
Okay. Time to adjourn tonight. We are going to adjourn in memory of Sergeant Virgil Thomas from the Richmond Police Department and Al DeRusso, former city employee. Those of you that are here, he was our maintenance guy, and a great guy he was. And may he rest in peace. With that, meeting's adjourned.